please silence it or turn it off. And if you would like to speak on any item that is on the agenda, please come and see the staff here. Submit one of the papers with your information so we can make sure that you will be heard. And with that, can we get a roll call, Maddie, please?
Yes, sir. Chair Algauer, Vice Chair Markarian,
Here.
Commissioner Beck,
Here.
Commissioner Brzee,
Here.
Commissioner Hicks,
Here.
Commissioner Rekstad, Commissioner Wolf.
All right, thank you very much. And moving right along with public comments. Do we have any public comments on the items that are not on the agenda?
No public comments on items not listed on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Moving right along, we have a consent agenda. We have the minutes from June 1st, Commissioners. If I can get someone to review, look at those, and get me a motion. So anyone other than Commissioner Hicks?
I'll move approval.
All right, I have a first. Do I have a second? Second. I have a first and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And we have one abstention? One abstention? All right, so that takes care of item number 1. Moving right along to item number 2. And who is going to be presenting that?
All right, that's Ben over on the phone. Kind of wish I was there with you guys, but stuck at home taking care of my daughter who is sick and trying to keep her from getting my son sick. But I will be presenting, and happy to do so, case number 21-138, a conditional use permit and architecture review for a 363,000 square foot tilted concrete warehouse building. The applicant is Transwestern Development Company, and this is a item that was continued from the June 1st, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Just as we're moving forward, just want to confirm everyone can hear me well.
Yes, and like we spoke earlier, Ben, we appreciate you making the effort to appear by telephone despite the family's need for your presence. So thank you so much. We hear you clearly. Go ahead.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so the next slide, Christian. The project location is on approximately 19.32 acres at the corner of 7th Place and County Line Lane. This site itself is zoned as regional commercial pursuant to the Freeway corridor specific plan. The site is mostly vacant properties. It does, however, include 2 single-family residences that would be proposed to be demolished. Now, next slide. A bit of background on the site itself, or kind of the regional context. The property is, as I mentioned, part of the Freeway corridor specific plan, which was adopted by the City Council in November of 2008. This overall specific plan encompasses about 1,242 acres of land and really is intended to support the city's long-term growth, providing both commercial, recreation, public facilities and housing for the city into the future. And so as part of the Freeway corridor specific plan, it did include a number of commercial uses that were intended to be located adjacent to Interstate 10, really kind of capturing both the circulation, the goods movement that is from Interstate 10, and then also providing, kind of that connectivity. And then the plan prioritizes residential kind of more within the interior of the plan area. As part of the specific plan, Regional Commercial District does allow for a pretty wide range of activity, including retail, service-oriented uses, and then warehousing and industrial uses as well, subject to approval through a conditional use permit process by the city. Now, as part of that specific plan, there was the certification of an environmental impact report, or EIR, for the project. And so as a set of what the baseline conditions are for the site, we are looking at it within the lens of the freeway corridor specific plan and its associated EIR. And then as part of the site kind of surrounding area, as I mentioned, it is regional commercial. It is next to regional commercial and housing uses in the future. And then it is also adjacent to commercial development that's happening within the city of Calamasa. So there's a fuel station and kind of quick service retail directly south of the site that is under construction. Next slide. So as I mentioned, it is a conditional use permit for what's referred to as the tilt-up concrete warehouse. Does include 353,000 square feet of warehousing space, 5,000 square feet of office space, and then it also includes a 5,000 square foot mezzanine with the office area. Now, the project itself does not have a specific end user at this point, so it's designed as what's referred to as a speculative project. What that means is they've designed it to accommodate kind of a wide range of users and gives the flexibility to lease it out to different companies, and then certainly allows a little bit more flexibility in the use as the years go on as well. The floor plan, parking, and loading has been designed to accommodate this. Some statistical details is the building itself is 45 feet tall, does feature 36 different door dots along the eastern edge of the site, and then it does include 393 car spaces and 55 trailer stalls to both serve the warehouse component, the activity that's generated from that, as well as the employees that would be working in the warehouse building. Next slide. So as part of the site, it does feature 4 different driveways that will serve it, with the primary access a 40-foot wide lane along County Line Lane that would then facilitate the truck movement into where the dock doors and trailer parking is. And then the employees and fire access is also provided along these 4 different driveways. Next slide is the site design. Kind of a few key elements that is, I think, worth noting as part of the project design. We, as the city, have worked with the applicant to design the layout of the project, one, to provide, as I mentioned, the flexibility in the end user and being able to accommodate, different businesses that may be appropriate here, but then also to looking at the context of the freeway corridor specific plans surrounding uses and designing a project that makes sense from there. And so as part of it, all the truck activity, the dock doors, are all designed and oriented to face towards Interstate 10. That way the noise that may be generated from trucks within the site is, within this area that's being impacted by the freeway noise as well. And so it mitigates by design some impacts that if the dock doors were facing another direction, it would have a more profound concern. The second element is the site grading itself is certainly, with a building this size, you have to create a flat pad and design a site that can match to that. There is some topography, especially as you get to the northern end of the site, and so they are proposing to level everything out and then provide a substantial landscape screen that helps tie in this grading area. So they tried to implement contour grading, stuff that gives a more naturalistic appearance, so that if you're driving along Interstate 10, you're going to see some of these new grades come about, but a lot of landscape and kind of natural features, so it still looks, it helps prevent it looking from being too artificial. And then the last part is shown on the left-hand image is the fencing as well. So they do provide a perimeter block wall that is designed to match the architecture of the building that will further screen it. So the perspective that a driver will have from Interstate 10 is you're not going to see the dock doors or the trucks loading in. You're going to see the hill, the landscape, and then the block walls, and then tying into the building design in the background from that foreground. And so it's designed to kind of align these different features to help kind of maintain a little bit more of an attractive appearance than some of the other warehouse projects you may see in other jurisdictions. that are quite apparent in their location in terms of the truck activity. Next slide. Now, as part of it, as I mentioned, the project is within that regional commercial land use district, and this is a use that is permitted through the conditional use permit process as a wholesale warehouse services and professional services category. In terms of the development standards in the freeway corridor specific plan, this project does comply with all those code requirements. So the project itself does provide the building setbacks, lot coverage, and other requirements of the specific plan through this proposed design. And then in the next slide, I included kind of for reference, this is also in the packet and staff report. The architecture design also has been augmented and enhanced through discussions with the city and the developer and their architect to provide, an attractive design that includes a lot of detailing, changes of materials, and articulation and other elements that help break up, some of the mass of the building. At the end of the day, it is a large concrete warehouse. You can't make it look like the Taj Mahal or the Royal Albert Hall, but it is a lot of details that have improved the design and certainly something that will make it an attractive feature with the detailing that's been added, including some of the knee brace kind of details at the tower elements, really prioritizing each corner that is visible from areas of the city, especially along Interstate 10, that those first glances you see of the building features additional detailing that helps tie it in and make it look more attractive, then tying in with the landscape and the fencing that I noted before to create a full perspective that will, make sense for a regional commercial type development. It is, at the end of the day, a freeway-oriented type project in terms of how the specific plan identifies this area. It is something that is going to be visible from the freeway, and so we have worked on the project design to make sure that that appearance is upheld and meets expectations that we would have for development in such that location. Now, into the next slide, I do want to identify, as I noted before, the freeway corridor specific plan featured an EIR that was certified and adopted in 2008 with the overall specific plan and identified and assessed impacts for regional commercial uses on the property. So that is in terms of the environmental consideration where the lay of the land is for this project to be evaluated with respect to, and then really looking into, okay, does this project fall within the scope of impact that was originally considered with the RC land use district? To that end, with the applicant's assistance, a number of different technical studies have been prepared, including air quality and greenhouse gas, health risk assessment of bioresources, cultural, all the way to noise impacts, trip generation analysis, and then additionally a traffic impact analysis memo to really assess what the impacts are with the project, and then dovetailing it back to the freeway corridor specific line EIR. As part of state law and the CEQA principles and those requirements, there were no new significant impacts or any increases that would occur from those previously identified impacts from the freeway corridor specific plan with this particular project. So in terms of the impacts, it is equal or less than what the freeway corridor had assessed before. And so with that, pursuant to section 15164, an addendum was prepared that addresses some of the minor project changes and elements, certainly making sure that we do our due diligence on those related impacts, but certainly it is within the scope of that and does not trigger a new subsequent environmental document pursuant to Public Resources Code 15162A. Now, I do want to note kind of quickly in terms of how the CEQA guidelines are. In 2008, level of service was a environmental factor, or the flow of traffic was a environmental factor that was included in the CEQA guidelines. Since SB 743, the traffic impacts or the flow of traffic level of service is no longer an environmental impact. It may certainly be an element of general plan consistency or kind of a nuisance element if there's a bad level of service, but it is not an environmental impact. However, as I noted, a traffic impact analysis memo was done for this project that did assess the trips generated by this project and what it would do for the localized intersections, and then prescribes mitigation measures to address those issues. And so really the key lesson is the off-ramp and on-ramp for Interstate 10 and County Line Road currently operates at a poor level of service. This project, similar to, as I mentioned, the commercial project in the city of Calamasa, have both identified that interim improvements to that intersection are required to essentially improve that level of service and to minimize that nuisance effect of a bad roadway condition. And so that was included in this project, and conditions of approval are identified to address what's needed to improve that intersection to a level of service C, which is what the general plan requires. And so it does include that nexus requirements for that. Next slide. As part of the project review, we did send out the notices at the time the project was deemed complete. As the Planning Commission is aware, this is a step that we do as a proactive measure to solicit feedback early in the process to figure out some concerns that people may have, but it's not necessarily something that is required under state law. As part of it, we did receive 2 separate comments. One was from a property owner near the site that had concerns over noise, air quality impacts, and traffic. As I noted, a number of technical studies have been provided and prepared that address the project impacts, and in the staff report includes the excerpts from those studies that address the concerns and demonstrate that the project falls within the EIR provisions of the freeway corridor specifically, and that those impacts would not be significant to that property owner nearby the site. Additionally, one other comment was received by the city of Calamasa. Their interest, and certainly the city of Yucaipa's interest as well, is, as I mentioned, the flow and capacity of County Line Road and Interstate 10. The cities have been working together for many years on the combined efforts to improve kind of our shared corridor of County Line Road between the cities. This is evident by some of the projects that are going on right now on the eastern edge of County Line Road, including City Council adopted a MND for a roundabout at Calamasa Boulevard and County Line Road at their Monday City Council meeting. So certainly we've been working to address the circulation needs of both our constituents, but also making sure that these projects that generate traffic also provide the necessary mitigation measures to make sure that everything works correctly. And so, as I mentioned, a traffic impact analysis memo was prepared. It does include the Calamasa project as well and their impacts, and assesses kind of the combined efforts and circulation requirements. As part of that, the recommendations from both respective studies is for a traffic signal to be installed on Interstate 10 for these individual projects as an interim measure. Over time, the city of Calamasa and Yucaipa will be certainly working on full improvements that will be tied into the completion of the freeway corridor specific plan, as well as Calamasa's Mesa Verde specific plan. But in terms of what the project specific impacts are from these 2 individual projects, the interim measures provide a level of service of C, which is an improvement over existing conditions as well. To the next slide, we did receive, following our notice of public hearing, 1 additional comment that was provided from the city of Calamasa. This comment letter has been distributed to all of the planning commissioners as well as the public resource counter. And then a response has also been provided by the applicant for the planning commission and members of the public benefit as well. I do want to kind of note all of this is tied into, again, that those interim traffic improvements for the off-ramp. The applicant, the city of Yucaipa and Calamasa, did meet on June 1st, 2022 to discuss some of the project-related elements. And then we, as the city of Yucaipa and Calamasa, also met on Monday this week to discuss some of the expectations for these improvements. Kind of the key concerns really is the coordination of the signal improvements. What we do not want in both cities is each project waiting for the other one to get started on making these improvements. And then ultimately we end up with projects that are about ready to be open, and the critical path items to get those signals installed had not occurred. And so as part of it, a updated condition of approval has been passed out that sets these expectations in a lot more greater specificity to make sure that these elements are met. I do want to note that as part of this afternoon, the city of Calamasa also did provide a subsequent response with some recommended changes to these conditions that I will talk about separately. But I do want to go to the next slide that identifies the two conditions. The first one being what was provided about the intersection improvements. The second one is a minor one, which is identifying the gallons per minute fire flow for the fire code. There is an exception provided in the California Fire Code, and so we did list a section or a text amendment that adds unless modified by applicable provisions of the California Fire Code to address that particular element, which allows a reduction of the gallons per minute if the building has a sprinkler system throughout. And so that is the applicant's intent, and so that would then trigger that section, and so we tried to make that a little bit more clear in the conditions. Now, as I mentioned, we did receive a subsequent letter or email from the city of Calamasa regarding the conditions. I do want to note kind of quickly what these elements are, or at least the city's perspective on these particular notes. One is the language that's in that condition gives a little bit of flexibility that if there's any other projects that kind of come online before the ultimate freeway interchange improvements are done and all that process has been done, they would also then be subject to the fair share requirements. But right now, the percentages that are listed in the condition reflect the traffic studies that both applicants prepared, and one being certified by the city of Calamasa, and then ours that's proposed tonight, that identifies those fair share contributions. And so we have that listed, and then it gives the flexibility if another project shows up tomorrow in either respective city that also then triggers some additional impacts to this intersection, then they may get wrapped in. But we don't want to, the suggested revisions, leave it a little bit too open-ended at this point. And based on the substantial evidence we have, we feel that the condition adequately protects all interests on that. And then also further, we did identify on our meeting of June 13th, that these were relevant traffic studies that we did have numbers to base some of this fair share costs on. And so rather than trying to renegotiate some of these different elements after the fact, we already have the data from there. And then the last part is a suggested condition that this project do essentially the ultimate improvements for the freeway interchange, or at least what had been spelled out in the freeway corridor, specifically in EIR. Now, two different elements are important to note. One is those ultimate improvements, as identified in the freeway corridor, specifically in EIR, address the build-out conditions of both this freeway corridor, specifically in EIR, as well as Mesa Verde being a cumulative project analysis that was done for the EIR, not necessarily a mitigation measure that in its totality is required for any one individual project. It's just as the freeway corridor is fully built out, these are the requirements that come into play. And the second part is, as part of that traffic study, the applicant and through this analysis has provided the substantial evidence that shows the nexus to the improvements that they're doing. With the improvements, the operation of that signal or that interchange operant goes from D and F to a C level, so it does meet the city's general plan requirements. And ultimately, these conditions address what the project's ultimate impact is to the intersection, It is worth noting that the cities can require conditions that address project-related impacts, but we can't necessarily go beyond that if there isn't that necessary nexus to justify what those conditions are. And so just wanted to provide that information for the Planning Commission as part of our response. But with that, certainly happy to keep discussions moving forward. With that, my last slide is that staff does recommend approval of the project subject to the conditions, provided the modified conditions as identified in the prior slide, adopt the findings, adopt the addendum to the freeway corridor EIR, and then direct staff to file a notice of determination. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer questions. I know the applicant and their team is either in person or on the phone. Since I am on the phone, please, articulate well so I can hear and provide responses too. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matlock. I have a couple of questions to the staff before we move to the applicant. Mr. Matlock mentioned the property owner comment. I couldn't see it in the report. What am I missing? Is there a comment that was submitted from a property owner other than the city of Calamasa?
So it is possible that
Yes, there was one from a Mr. Marcroft. Let me pull up this.
Is it in the report, staff?
It is, yes. It is one of the attachments.
If I can have one of the staff that are present bring me a copy, because I didn't see it in the report that I was going through. Asked a couple of the commissioners here as well, and we couldn't see it. So I'd like to see that property owner's comments. So that was my first question. Second question is, we have a few items that were put here in front of us, and I wanted to ask, Ben, I don't know if you're familiar with it or if I can ask Mr. Preciado here. So let's start with the June 9th, 2022 City of Calamasa letter that notes a few items and they have a few comments. Can we be educated on what are these comments about and what do we need to consider from the city manager and the planning development manager, Ms. Lucia. So let's start with this June 9, 2022 letter. What are we looking at?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chair. The June 9th comment letter received from the City of Calamasa does identify, it does include various comments. I do want to point out that there is a response to those comments from, a response letter to those comments from the applicant, which you may want to hear their presentation first, and then we could look into those specifically.
Okay, so that's the first one. And then the amended conditions of approval, that's something that was in front of us. What is this? Number 26 and number 122. It says amended conditions of approval, required fire flow for this project. What is this?
So those two amended conditions of approval are the ones that Mr. Matlock referred to in his presentation, one regarding the fire flow and the gallons per minute. The other one was regarding the traffic, the interim traffic signal at the on-off ramps at I-10 and County Line Road.
All right, so we will incorporate this into our motion. Should we proceed with the recommendations A through D in addition to these two amended conditions?
Including those amended conditions, yes.
All right. And then the third item I have in front of me is a June 15th letter from the City of Calamasa. It says condition number ##. What are we looking at here?
The June 15th letter from the City of Calamasa includes a response to their review of the amended condition of approval that you just referred to related to
Got it.
traffic.
So this is for 26 and 122. All right. And the fourth item I have is Environment Planning Development Solutions, Inc., a letter dated June 15, 2022. And these are the response to comments that were provided, the comments provided by the city of Calamasa?
Yes.
All right. And the applicant is going to discuss this letter, or they have other things to discuss as far as responding to the city of Calamasa letter?
If the commission chooses, you could hear their response and their remarks regarding that letter, as well as any presentation they might have.
Is Environment Planning Development Solutions, Inc. present?
Can I ask?
Sure.
And then if I may add in, so I was looking at the packet. It does look like there was a glitch in the PDF reader for the one property owner response. I do have it pulled up on my computer. It was more just general questions about the project. And so the staff report does kind of address the different stuff. And I can certainly read the comment, but it says, kind of, you have a copy of the plans. How will the site be accessed? How loud is the truck and will it see the decibels? What is the legal limit of noise around residential areas? Will a sound barrier be installed? What are the operating hours? Where's the access points? Has a SMOD study been completed? How many trucks will be going through? And then can County Line Lane and County Line Road support the traffic? Is the summary of those comments from Mr. Marcroft.
Got it. All right. Commissioner Hicks, you had a question?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. One was a comment from City of Calamasa on June 9th that based on the project description, the project would remove a substantial amount of regional commercial space adjacent to residential. This would be replaced by industrial uses. The addendum and trip generation memo should describe the quantity and changes the trip. So I'm just wondering, what is the trip generation for the warehouse based on? How many trips per day of semis?
I don't have that information directly in front of me, but perhaps the project applicant can present that information.
Well, then one of the other questions is on the amended conditions of approval. It's showing that the warehouse project in the shared portion of the estimated $1.2 million for the traffic signal, and that's for is that for the long term, the built out, fully complete traffic signal and intersection improvements for both intersections, or?
That cost estimate is for the interim intersection and signal improvements at the on-off ramps at both sides
Both
of the
sides
freeway.
of the freeway,
Yes.
correct? So out of that 1.2 million, it's saying that the RV fueling and retail space for the Calamasa project, which is, I'm assuming, the Circle K, and they've just almost completed their RV fueling addition to that they have 77.3% of the estimated additional traffic, or they're gonna pay for 77.3% of that, compared to what, 30-some percent for this warehouse project, based on traffic flow?
That is what's being proposed, and it's based on the percentages from the traffic impact analysis.
That just seems way out of line to me. And it comes from, I've owned a gas station with a diesel, high-speed diesel fuel dispensers with that. And this Circle K is actually my morning stop every day. And I see what the traffic is now, which is pretty minimal, especially based on fuel prices. And I can't understand at their diesel prices why they would even attempt to put in an RV fueling facility, because they're so much higher than anything else around. So that's why my curiosity with what the proposed or what the numbers were to determine these trips per day, because the warehouse alone has well, total parking space is what, 354?
394, yeah.
Well, 394, yeah. So you got the potential just of that of 780 what, 88 trips per day just on those cars making 2 trips if you're full. And that doesn't include the number of semis you have coming in and out of there. So that's just my concern, where that trip count comes from. Is it based on because there's not a tenant for it now that we don't know what it is, or?
So the trip generation rates for the warehouse are based on the square footage. And then I do want to note that there's also a conversion to passenger car equivalents that's included as part of the calculation methodology to convert that number into vehicles. And I also wanted to note that the traffic analysis for the RV and gas fueling station is for the entire project, not just for all, and I believe it was two phases in total, and I believe that traffic impact analysis is for the
Yeah,
entire.
the second phase is almost, well, they've set pumps and all the work, they're doing the off-sites right now on the street improvement out in the street. But they're adding a total of 6 dispensers that fuel, I believe, from either side. They still have them covered, but you have 6 dispensers, a total of 4 lanes possible, or 8 fueling position, or let's see what it would be. There's 2, 4, 6, so you have 12 fueling positions, but if they're RVs, as tight as they are, they're not gonna be able to get doubled up on those spaces, right? Right. And so I'm just, and not knowing, I'm just looking at what I do know about the facility that's there versus what I know a warehouse generates. And I'm just wondering how we come up with that, even with both phases of that gas station. I think they have a total, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 8 to 10 fueling positions on the regular gas pumps now. So I don't see it, even if it doubled from what it is now, it wouldn't be much of an impact there.
Yeah, and
My day-to-day thing is,
and just to clarify, I believe there's also a third component to that project, which includes a retail.
right. Yeah, I know that's eventually part of it, but that's in a space now that's paved for parking for RVs. But I'm just looking at, what I'm aware of what truck traffic backup is coming off freeway ramps. And that ramp is just recently, at least the ramp on the west side of the freeway has recently been upgraded in the last 2 years, along with the lane replacement on the freeway. So I'm wondering, one, it's not constructed wide enough for a double lane coming off the freeway. So you're gonna be limited both ways to a single lane off the freeway. And then you're gonna put semis in there turning both ways. So I'm just wondering, just a question for me, long-term, what's the plan for traffic? Because it's gonna be a hell of a mess, excuse me. It's gonna be a heck of a mess out there with the additional truck traffic, so.
Yeah, so
If I may add in as well, so Fermin did touch upon the traffic generated in terms of the breakdown for both projects is based on the ITE calculation for it. Certainly the fuel station component has a certain level of traffic impacts, but then certainly the quick service kind of retail and restaurant use also has kind of a higher, peak timeline traffic generation than other uses. The warehouse project was analyzed pursuant to the ITE calculation. And then additionally, based on the number of trips, the passenger car equivalent was added in. So essentially, it increases what the demand is to reflect the constraints that a truck moving through an intersection would have versus a typical passenger car. So certain trucks count as, 3 different individual passenger cars to accommodate that traffic impact. And the key element is you may have trucks going through during the day, but the traffic impact analysis is ultimately based upon what the peak hour is. And so it gets broken down, even if you have trucks going kind of through, is, when it's the most heaviest use, what is the flow of that intersection? And right now, with the analysis for both individual projects, there are that measure to do the stop signal, really to help provide those gaps in the roadway for cars to get through and maneuver around the freeway. And then certainly, I know as part of your comment, you mentioned that The gas station probably doesn't do the best because of their prices, but that's, I think, more of a factor of who the current owner maybe is and how they're marketing it, but it isn't necessarily something that we could bank on as a in perpetuity outcome just because if someone else shows up or a different manager wants to be more competitive in their pricing, they certainly would be able to do so and kind of modify it from there. ITE calculations itself is meant to provide more of that broad brush understanding of how it will work and provide kind of that conservative analysis. But it won't necessarily be the end-all, be-all of, hey, this business right now is doing poorly, and so that's what we base it off. We try to account for what it should be based on that substantial evidence and that uniform practice of doing traffic counts. But EPD, I'm sure, can go into more detail of the project and their analysis into it.
No, I understand. I'll go back to just the ARCO station. It's one of the number one ARCO stations in Southern California, is on Oak Glen Road exit. And they have almost twice as many, well, they have more than twice as many fueling positions as this will be built out. And a 76 station never is in competition with an ARCO as far as pricing. They go off of credit card market more than they do the low cost side of it. So you can see what the traffic flow is off of a station that has twice as many fueling positions and a much lower price all the time, and see what the traffic flow is there. And with a 4-lane plus 2 turn lanes, you don't have much problem. But I think my biggest concern would be just the overall traffic flow, because you've got one off-ramp that's going to service this building that has a bridge underpass that's 2 lanes that cannot be widened without a major overhaul to the bridge, because the footings for the bridge only extend about maybe 8 feet from the curb face now. So you're not going to get 4 lanes under there without a major bridge rebuild. And then your other option is Oak Glen Road, that they would come up, and because it starts backing up, truckers are going to try to get to their location. So you're going to back up and you're going to come down the frontage road through Calamasa Boulevard, which is already pretty impacted at certain times of the day trying to get in. And then the other exit would be Calamasa, their exit. And now you're talking about a roundabout at Yucaipa or County Line and Calamasa Boulevard. And I'm just wondering, is that planned to be large enough to facilitate or to handle semis with 53-foot trailers to get around that traffic circle? Or if they miss the on-ramp, are they going to be stuck?
Well, if I can just add, reference to your first question, Commissioner Hicks, as you mentioned, there is a plan for the ultimate interchange improvements for that, the on-off ramps and the underpass there.
Right.
And as part of that, Mr. Matlock mentioned the other project, the environmental review that Yucaipa City Council approved on Monday, and that's for the other project you referred to, the dual-lane roundabout at County Line Road and Calamasa Boulevard. The design for that project has not started, but because County Line Road and Calamasa Boulevard are considered arterial streets, they will be designed to accommodate the truck traffic, because it's an intersection of 2 major arterial streets.
Right. Yeah, it's just looking at what's existing there now with the shopping centers and Fast Trip on that corner. You're going to wipe out Fast Trip's limited space they have now, so that's probably going to go away at some point. But it is kind of tight. But yeah, 53-foot semis make a little harder to get around a traffic circle, especially when there's no other way around it at that point. But so what's the timing on the overpass and the off-ramps to be completed? That hasn't even started design yet, has it?
It hasn't. I know that the PSR, PR phase of that project has been in the cities of Yucaipa's capital improvement program for several years, and we have had discussions with the City of Cal Mesa about starting that process. And so it's timing. It's the first step will be to get through the PSR, PR process, and those are discussions that have been initiated with the City of Cal Mesa.
Because those off-ramps and that underpass are located in the city of Calamasa, correct?
Correct.
Right. And so you don't have any real influence over the time that that's going to happen?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's really my only concern with logistics of how you get traffic in and out of there. That plus I think the percentage split between the gas station and the warehouse structure are terribly skewed against the gas station. But that's just my opinion, and I don't have the traffic counts or anything to go by to base that on, just my experience in the past owning a gas station. So
All right.
I'm done.
Thank you, Commissioner Hicks. So the only other, yeah, go ahead.
I was reading, so I'm sorry I missed when Commissioner Wolf was asking about the, asking about the enlargement under the freeway, widening of those lanes under the freeway. Is that going to happen or no?
That will be part of the ultimate interchange improvements, yes.
That's the city of Calamasa.
Right, yeah. So that will happen
No,
prior to
there's no
or
current
in
plans.
conjunction with building this? Or are we going to have semis going under there for X number of years with no promise of having it widened? Or
So
what's that?
the amended condition of approval before you identifies that the interim improvements, which include the intersection improvements at the on-off ramps and a traffic signal, will be installed prior to the building being occupied.
Right, the traffic signal, but how about widening the lanes under the freeway?
Yeah, that is not included in the conditions of approval. That's a
Never at all,
separate
never,
process.
ever?
From my understanding, that is not within our purview. That's not a Yucaipa plan. That's a city of
That would be a
Calamasa.
Calamasa thing, but I mean, it's going to impact both Yucaipa and Calamasa. And I think it's kind of very closely related to the desirability of having a warehouse on that location. I mean, you know, it's nice to have a warehouse there, but if it's going to mean traffic in every direction for who knows how far out, that's got to be considered and discussed. And that's why I know that it would be nice to know what Calamasa is thinking about that.
Well, as I mentioned,
If I may,
go ahead, Ben.
I was saying, if I may add, so the ultimate roadway improvements for the off-ramp is a condition that is required as part of the ultimate completion and efforts of both the city of Yucaipa's freeway corridor specific plan, as well as the city of Calamasa's Mesa Verde specific plan. So as all those developments are moving forward and tracking into those subsequent phases of individual projects, that's when that interchange improvements will be necessary. And so, as Fermin talked about, that's why we're participating with Calamasa to do the PSR to get the project started, and certainly, being a helpful reviewer. To support their project in the future. Right now, in terms of what these projects that are before us, both the City of Calamasa, which had been approved, and us, right now, the interim improvements provide an improvement to the flow of that intersection over what is there today. So with the project being added in those improvements, it will work better than it does today if the project didn't show up and those improvements were not done. That's where I reference some of the nexus and improvement requirements is, the project is is able to facilitate improvements to address their impacts, but we couldn't necessarily require them to build the full intersection improvements because they're not the ones that are creating all that impact by themselves. The totality of all these other projects that would be part of these specific plans, and it's intended to be, with the later phases, the interchange project improvement, that design, the Caltrans review process, all would happen, and then it would line up so that once those other projects are coming in line, then those improvements then, occur, and then that justification in terms of funding and everything else also then aligns at that time too.
Thank you, Ben, for the answer. And as you know, this is Rexted speaking. As you know, I'm a pretty simple guy. So my question is pretty simple, because I'm still not clear. Will there be plans eventually, or is there discussion for future widening under the freeway? I could think that's a yes or no answer.
The answer is yes.
There is plan and discussion to widen under the, so then they're gonna be tearing that all out. I mean, and they just built it, what, 15 years ago?
I don't
That overpass?
recall when it was built, but
Oh, that's pretty new. What do you think? You guys have been around for a while. How,
Well, one of the things is the construction during, I guess my concern would be the only ramp that I'm really concerned about, because most of the input to a warehouse is going to be coming from two directions. Well, it's obviously only two
to and
directions.
from?
So you're going to have your larger trucks, the 53-foot style semis, coming off on the northbound lanes of the freeway. They'd get off on the next to Baker's, that off-ramp that's closest to Baker's. And then from there, even with the signal light, when they make the turn to go underneath the freeway to the warehouse, you've got a stack between that and the next signal light of probably two trucks.
Right.
And one of them is going to be hanging across the intersection, blocking traffic that's trying to get underneath. So that,
And if you have a
it's
single,
tight.
a
It's very
single lane
tight.
in each direction, that gets pretty messy.
Yeah.
That's why I'm wondering, I mean, I don't
And
know.
I'm the pro-development guy.
Well, yeah,
I just
I'm-
want the traffic to work for it.
That's right. I mean, that's, you look at the interchange like on Milliken and the 10, or Etowanda and the 10, I mean, they prepared for semi-traffic. I just don't think that, I don't think there's anything about that overpass, or the ramps can be remedied, I understand that. But the underpass really is what it is. The underpass is totally, in my opinion, a mess for a lot of semi-traffic. And then we've got people that are driving cars that expect to get through there too. So I mean, I really, really have a hard time with understanding how the flow of traffic is gonna be appropriate and acceptable in that underpass, the way it is right now.
All right, so we will hear from the applicant, and I think we have the representative from the city of Calamasa that I think we'll discuss that too. So let's
Okay,
come back to
good.
that
Okay.
and hold that. The other question I had to the staff is, I see an email from Ms. Lucia as well, dated today at 4:26 p.m. and a response at 5:45 p.m. from Mr. Preciado. So this is hot stuff right here, just happening in the nick of time, and we appreciate that. My question is, what is she referencing in the engineering department's requested revisions? Is that this Environmental Planning Development Solutions, Inc.? Revisions?
that email is referring to the amended condition of approval number 122.
Okay, so who prepared that? Who prepared the amended conditions of approval?
The City of Yucaipa staff did. And
Okay.
that amended condition came from several meetings and discussions with the City of Calamasa, as well as the developer, the project applicant.
Okay, so my question is in Kelly's email from today at 4:26, she says, please also enter the attached into the record for tonight's hearing. These are the engineering department's requested revisions.
So, Vice Chair Markarian, the letter that you're referencing is the city of Calamasa reviewed what we had sent them on what the conditions should be,
Oh, this right here.
and then made suggested changes that they would like to see with that. As I talked about in my presentation, as well as the comment letter or response that Fermin had provided, some of the different changes that Calamasa is requesting, we don't necessarily agree is appropriate for the project for the reasons stated, including, trying to tie in the data from the existing traffic studies that have been, prepared for this individual project. And then the last part being the nexus of some of the improvements that are being requested, exceeding what is necessarily what the project related impacts would be. And then I did want to note, as part of the discussion that was going on, the length of the freeway off-ramp, or at least County Line Road in between the two different segments of the off-ramps, is over 350 feet. So several different trucks could fit within that if they were queuing up. And so I just want to note that as well, that I think there's a little bit more space than I think maybe recognized at first glance with the flow of that intersection.
All right, Ben, thank you so much, and it has been brought to my attention. So there is this June 15th letter that addresses the revisions. All right, so that's all the stuff that we had here added in front of us, and I just wanted to make sure we got everything in order. Thank you, staff, thank you.
Actually, before we hear from the applicant, I'd like to have clarified, and I haven't done it line by line, there's the letter dated June 15th on the City of Calamasa letterhead. The other document we have is a single sheet with the topic amended conditions of approval. It looks to me like the suggested changes from Calamasa, and again, I didn't do a line by line, did not get incorporated into the single sheet. So which of these are we looking at as staff's recommendation for condition 122?
The amended condition, this sheet right here. So this is what the city, from my understanding is, so the letter of June 15th is what the city of Calamasa would like this to look like. But after going back and forth, this is what the city of Yucaipa Planning Department is proposing that we approve. And we're going to hear the city of Calamasa as well.
Correct.
That is correct.
All right. So this is the proposed condition from our staff.
Yes.
Yes.
By this, for the record, I mean amended conditions of approval, one sheet.
One sheet that has numbers 26 and 122, yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, thank you. This was just put in front of us, so that's why we're trying to decipher all of this. All right, with all of that, is the applicant present, or are they on the phone? All right, come on up, introduce yourself. Please use the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Jeremy Kraut, actually the applicant's representative, planning consultant. So not the applicant is in the audience as well, but I'm here to speak because a lot of technical comments as well. And so I look forward to having a dialogue with you about that. I did prepare a presentation. I don't know if that's something I could.
Okay, I didn't catch your name. One more time.
No problem. Jeremy Kraut.
Jeremy?
Jeremy, yes. All right, well, just want to first thank Commission for your time tonight and attention to the matter. I know this is a newer type project that the city hasn't seen a lot of, and we appreciate all the questions and dialogue that's happened so far. Your staff is tremendous. They've done a significant amount of work throughout the timeframe of this project. I really want to hand it to them for their attention to detail, their willingness to work through challenging questions and issues to make sure that the city is represented well. Ben did a fantastic job doing the overview, so I don't want to repeat a lot of what he said, but so I'll go through my presentation and happy to dive into anything more in detail that you would prefer me to focus on. So I will start with just as far as the project, again, happy to be in front of you with a presentation. Maybe you could go to the next slide. Oop, thank you. Oh, you do? Oh, yeah, I know you are. I had no doubts. So aerial of the site, just to show the makeup of the parcels in case we needed to reference any of those. Accumulation of parcels that took some time to accumulate and present in front of you to create a logical site that allowed for a reasonable amount of development that made sense here. Well, I guess just importantly, we recognize a number of things right off the bat. Obviously, with the freeway visibility, it's important from a design perspective, and your staff was very focused on that as well. And the architect and the design team really paid attention to that intentionally in their design effort. South of it is, you see the gas station under construction, not quite constructed yet in the aerial. But obviously the access was really important from the standpoint of design and considering the issues that were raised during the commission's discussion. Just the overall site plan showing the freeway corridor specific plan and the site identified there in the bottom right up against the freeway. As we heard, the uses are allowed, subject to a conditional use permit. And as far as the site plan, again, we recognize the access is coming from the south, and so all the access points are coming there off that road, County Line Road, or County Line Lane. And the intention was to split the traffic so that it was real clear distinguishing between the passenger cars and the truck traffic. So the blue indicates the passenger car entrances. The yellowish color there is the truck entrance. And they have been designed so that they really prohibit the flow of truck traffic through the passenger car lanes. As you see on the west side of the site, on the left side of that screen, you see kind of a lot of kind of chicanes, essentially, that really would prevent or limit the ability of truck traffic to go through that. So they would not be going up against the residential area, residential homes to the south. So that was an intentional design effort to avoid any type of impact along that edge. Further, the throat, if you want to call it, the driveway from County Line Lane to where the truck parking and loading areas are, is a significant distance to really allow for trucks to stack along that area to prevent going onto the streets or having any truck parking on your streets. So it's a concern that every, I think, city and an owner of these types of buildings would really be concerned with as well. And so that was a design process to ensure that there isn't a potential for conflict later on once a tenant is in there. Overall site plan with the landscape coloring on there. Again, the intention was to set the building back away from the freeway and have enough landscaping in there to screen visibility from the freeway. And then also have enough landscaping on some of the edge conditions where it is adjacent to other uses. As far as the building elevations, again, your staff was focused on really in coming up with a design that addressed the edges to make sure that the corners especially, and then carry that through the design to have an architectural enhanced look to make it appear more like office-oriented use as opposed to solely manufactured or solely warehouse use. And I think that achieves that those are where the office or administrative locations would be. And then just a street or I guess a human level visibility of one of the elevations as well. Similarly on the other corner of the site. Now I have this slide here that we could reference later on if that would help, but just to again give the identification of where the future signals would be. And we do have our traffic engineer here to address very specific traffic numbers, if that is a question of yours, but I try to note down a couple of the comments or questions that you have, and I can go through those after I get through the presentation. But just a note that we did hear clearly from City Cal Mesa the interest in having the signals built during, to address traffic, not just from the warehouse use, but also the gas station use and the future expansion area that is in the dirt area to the west of the, what's shown here now, you can see the gas station built. And so the traffic study prepared for that fuel station use did account for those signals as well. We used that traffic analysis to also understand the relationship of that with the proposed warehouse, the cost of the signals, and the allocation of the costs associated with the allocation of fair share contribution fees that would go from both projects and other projects that could come in line to use the signal later on as well. And just for quick reference, yeah, the gas station study that Cal Mesa reviewed and approved, prepared for that gas station project, did estimate 2,977 trips associated with the gas station, the full use, not just the one parcel. The project is 828 trips total for the warehouse use. And then just because this is this project is a part of the Freeway Corridor specific plan, an EIR was prepared for that specific plan and had to assume a certain development on the project site. With the commercial use, the estimated trips that the EIR assumed was 9,660 trips. So again, compared to the 828 that the project is actually producing. So a much different type of use, lower trip count. But yes, I understand that there are trucks associated with that as well, and we did account for that in the analysis. One important thing just relative to projects like these, they do have some pretty significant fiscal impact benefits that are recognizable when you count for especially what is coming off the site today, which is vacant. So based on the warehouse use, and this is coming from fiscal impact consultants that do studies like these all the time. In this case, it came from a David Tausig report that was completed for a industrial use, and they assume that out of these types of uses, they'd have about 1 job per 1,000 square feet, so equivalent to about 350 jobs. That would be permanent use, permanent jobs in this location. Construction jobs are about 219. This is going to be at least a year-long construction effort that they'd be having jobs in this location. I'd estimate more than that time frame, but it's just a rough estimate. Out of the 353 jobs, it estimates about a $18 million annual payroll that would come off of that type of use. And the property tax revenue of about $279,000 that would come annually off the use as well. They go to the city. Taxable value is about $79 million, and the sales tax assumption per employee is about $307,000, and indirect sales about $153,000. In addition, there's one-time payments because of the project. The city has adopted impact fees that are required for projects like these. So those account for about $1.8 million that would go to the city as part of that to account for all the improvements that are identified here, drainage, traffic circulation, public facilities, and fire facilities as well. So those fees would go towards improvement of those and recognition that the project may have some impact on those as well. This is just the plan of the phase 1, the gas station and the phase additional phases that are planned for the gas station site. Just had brought it in here for reference so that in case we had a discussion about that. And then just importantly, that the traffic analysis, especially in the EIR, accounted for the Freeway Corridor specific plan and the gas station. They were looking at other projects in the area that would contribute towards impacts on, or traffic towards all these intersections that we're analyzing, and especially the freeway on-off ramps that we've been discussing. And so we listed all those and identified, I know it's a little bit hard to see on here, but there's everything from residential, mixed use, office and warehouse, car wash, condos, and other similar uses, commercial use as well. So those were all accounted for and analyzed, and those would be a party to a lot of the improvements that are occurring. They're all contributing impact fees that are going towards additional traffic improvements. So that's the overview that I just wanted to provide from a project standpoint. I think Ben already addressed the the length of the lane that comes off the freeway off-ramp going under the bridge, or under the overpass, I should say. It is about 368 feet or so, so it's a good distance as far as allowing stacking, and importantly, again, we're looking at peak hours, and it's rare to have that many in one time coming off and stacking. The flow of the traffic is not expected to have a significant amount of stacking under there, and that's a pretty large distance to account for a number of trucks, if at all, if they were coming at one time. Also, the lanes under the bridge or the overpass are standard width, so that, and they accommodate fueling trucks that come through today. It isn't an issue, and there isn't a need to expand those lanes at this point. I know some comments, Ben addressed some of them. I didn't know if there were some outstanding ones that you'd like me to address, but again, I have the traffic engineer here, as well as the CEQA preparer on the phone, and some other people in the audience as well. There was, I think, just a point to talk about the response to comments. I'd be happy to go through those if that's what you prefer, or we could address any other specific comments, because the list of, I guess, comments and responses were provided in the package as well.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kraut. So my first question to you off the get-go, obviously, you've had an opportunity to review all the concerns that the city of Calimesa has presented in their letters?
Correct, we have, and the responses to comments, we believe, addressed each one of those.
Okay.
And there were some minor changes to the addendum as a result of the comments. Those were provided in your packet. There were 2 pages, I believe, that were included as attached to that. And then the remainder of the comments addressed each of the comments as well. Remainder of the comments were addressed in the responses in that package, and we believe each one of those have been covered. The conditions, that was really the formal comment, if you want to call it that. Then the conditions discussion that occurred, where you received, the city of Yucaipa sent the draft condition to the city of Calimesa, and then the response back, I did read those as well. I concur with staff's response to the condition change requested by Calimesa, that the condition already addresses the issues that are needed in the relative to the intersections, the freeway on and off ramp intersections.
All right, so I think the traffic seems to be the biggest concern we have, and this environment, Planning Development Solutions, Inc., is your response to the city of Calimesa?
Correct.
Okay. All right, commissioners, questions to the applicant, representative?
I've got one quick question. The wall going around the property, is it gonna be a tilt-up style wall? Is it gonna be 6 or 8 feet tall? Or is it block?
I don't have that exact, concrete block tilt-up
It'll be tilt-up style?
style,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you know how tall it'll be?
Sure, if you don't mind coming up to the mic so we can get what you're saying recorded. Please just state your name and your role.
Yes, Roger Datos, GAA Architects. I'm a principal at the office. The perimeter screen walls will be concrete tilt-up. From a height standpoint, there's quite a bit of grade differential when we look at the site, because we're dealing with slope on the site, but then we're dealing with slope on the freeway itself. So it's sloping I believe from the north to the south. So as you're coming along the freeway, you have different views depending on where you are within the freeway. So it's a combination of, as you can see on the parking lot area, we have quite a bit of parking and transition, and that's done to deal with the grade, excuse me, the grade on the site. So we have a combination of slope and screening. So the minimum screen wall height probably would be about 10 feet, 8 to 10 feet, depending on the location. And it's designed based on the view angle of what you see from the freeway. So it's a combination of slope, landscaping, then the buffer of the screen wall. But it's a compatible building material that is concrete tilt-up that would be utilized.
Yeah, okay.
All right,
Any other questions?
I think that was the only, anything else, Mr.
Yeah,
Hicks?
I have a couple. On the, while you're here, the elevation, it's a little small to read, and I didn't want to open all the plans again up here.
Sure.
But the elevation of the warehouse compared to the entrance street, are you basically at that level? You don't have much room, so I'm assuming you're pretty close to.
No, actually, the street level is much lower than the building finished floor.
Okay,
So the building is a little bit higher. We did these in-house, so we have the ability to draw it in 3D, but it becomes very difficult to capture the slope.
sure.
So what's illustrated in front is stairways and ramps. So when you're on the street level, you're going to be looking up at the building slightly. But then it transitions as you get around the building on 7th Street because you're going a little bit higher.
Right.
So-
So on the north end of the building, where it's situated, there's a ridge line that comes off past the rest stop area. When you cross, is that Wilson Creek on that side, I guess it is? But there's a ridge line that comes up there, and then there's a ravine. And your fill extends all the way back to that ridge line. So at that point on the north end, how much higher than the freeway will the floor of the building approximately be?
On that particular area, that was actually the difficult part in regards to 7th Street actually is a little bit lower than our site. So we do have some slope and retaining. And it appears we're almost, from what I recall doing the view angles, almost similar finish grade to the elevation of the freeway at that point.
At that point?
Yeah.
I
And
would
the
think it
building-
would be
the
about a
building's actually
30-foot fill back there, but,
Well, the building is actually sloping from the north to the south at 0.5% to capture grade.
at what percentage?
0.5%.
0.5%, okay.
So
And how
that's why the
long's-
building is elevated on the south end. It's up out of the air a little bit.
Yeah.
But we were dealing, from a site planning constraint, dealing with the ravine that's up to the north and what we could actually provide as retaining its slope on that angle.
Uh-huh.
So
0.5%, and what's the full length of the building?
the building length is, I don't have the plan in front of me here. What was that? 840, so that would be about four.
So about 40,
4.5.
about 4 to 5 foot difference in
Drop, yeah.
elevation. But I think the freeway elevations, you don't, so there's nothing that actually references, but that's just
Yeah.
from what it's gonna look like coming down the freeway compared to where the walls are. That's why you're at a 10-foot wall there, because you're at a lower elevation of the freeway, correct?
It does change and we provided view angles to planning for review.
Right.
to
So as you're
illustrate.
coming, then the wall height will increase to screen the freeway
But
traffic?
it's
Is-
a combination of slope and grade, and then
Right.
with the screen wall to be able
Okay.
to screen the trail.
And then I guess my bigger question would be on the ingress egress off of this new little road that was created behind the gas station. Is there any street improvements that are planned with that?
I believe we're taking it, I believe it's a collector street from what I recall, so it's a 60-foot right-of-way.
Well, it's County Line Lane, and then I don't know what the name of that street is when it actually,
It's County Line Lane also as it comes down.
all the way around, County Line Lane. So that's,
There would be improvement in front of the sites. I believe the right-of-way is 30-foot half-width, so 60-foot right-of-way with a 12-foot parkway from what I recall.
60 foot. What about when it turns north-south there?
That's outside our constraints, so I didn't see any conditions for improvement for that portion of the street.
Because that's just a one-lane, very narrow little roadway going through there now, one lane each way, with a house, with several houses on the side of it. So that making that turn coming in there can be kind of tight, I would.
It is,
If I may interject or at least provide some clarity, to Commissioner Hicks' comment, the applicant will be conditioned to do roadway improvements along their entire frontage, so that does include the 7th Place roadway that goes north to south, so they will be widening it, doing the parkway and sidewalk that connects to the regional commercial site directly north of the site. In looking at the grade elevations as well, the seventh place kind of dips down as it heads towards to where that creek is, or that kind of incised area is to that northern property. But the freeway kind of stays up. There's some grade changes that occur. And so generally speaking, the freeway is within the same finished floor area of the building. So they will be kind of, leveling out and adding fill at the north end of the site for their building pad. And then it will kind of be a slope adjacent to seventh place, but in terms of what the freeway is, it'll be still relatively consistent grades, and so that's where their 8 to 10 foot wall and some of those changes as they drop down on their site for the loading bays, which are a little bit lower. That's where you'll see some of those changes to help obscure the truck activity within the development.
Does that answer?
Yeah. I'm just looking at the plan on the back corner of the retaining wall at the low point where they make the first retaining wall. I've got a 233947, and then the finished floor for the building is 2360. So I've got a 26-foot difference in elevation on that end. Now, not that I'm really concerned with that, but I just want everybody else on the commission to know what the elevation difference is there. You've got close to a 30-foot elevation difference between what is closest from what I see of the freeway off-ramp and, or Interstate 10 off-ramp and the building. So it's set in considerable, which is great because it screens it, but it's also, it's a large fill.
Yeah.
So I guess my concern, I understand the road widening on County Line Lane, but the access point coming off of what we consider County Line Road coming in, when they turn past the new gas station development, that's in City of Calamasa, so we have no purview over that and the improvements that might need to be done. And since you have residences sitting on that side, you can't widen the street. And the gas station, when they allowed them to get permitted, you can't widen the street anymore on their side because they already did their improvements. So it looks tough. I mean, if I'm building a building this size, I want good access. So I'm not sure where we're at. And then one other point, since it was brought up again, the off ramps. Center to center, you said was 300 and what feet? Ben?
I believe it was 360 feet.
360. Do you know what the width of those intersection is, BCR to BCR, by chance? That's the beginning of the curb radius anyway, guys. So I would say it's at least 60 feet in a intersection. So what I'm just trying to determine is from the back of your crosswalks that you would have that would normally start at the BCR or the beginning of the curb radius for an off-ramp or an intersection of any type. Then you've got your stack or you've got your walkway, your pedestrian walkway or crosswalk going across. And then you've got the stacking distance between that. And a legal semi is 75 feet is what's permitted by the Highway Patrol or California Code. So you've got a 75-foot semi, so two semis is 150 feet, plus the distance between them. So as I said, by the time you take that BCR, because you're going center to center of those off-ramps, you're gonna have a third truck that's going to be hanging in the intersection.
If I may interject, I measured from where the theoretical sidewalk would be for that. So if I'm measuring center to center of the off-ramp location, there's probably at least 400 feet.
If you measure, if I can add, if you measure center to center, that adds almost another 100 feet.
Does it? So it's
Yes.
400 feet BCR to BCR then?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you've got a truck stack of 3 and the fourth one would be out. And I'm not saying this doesn't work, but it looks tight. It looks real tight to me, but
Anything else? All right, it looks tight is the finishing comments of Mr. Commissioner Hicks. Commissioners, any comments, questions for the representative? No? All right.
If I could just have one comment just to make on this is the gas station plan again, and they did account for, I don't know if you can see their truck radius turns on here coming through the site around and down County Lane, so they have accounted for that as well, as far as trucks using.
For your trucks using their?
No, their trucks, RVs.
Well, that's for one fuel truck, you know, twice.
Right, but my point is, the radius turns, I think your question was, can it fit, and they have also.
But again, that's a set of doubles, excuse me, that's a set of doubles fuel trailers, or sometimes a semi, and that's minimal usage. But the other thing, I'll go back, you had 280 or 828 trips a day for your facility?
That's what I had.
Yeah.
And then 2,900 or 700 trips a day for the gas station?
2977 is what they accounted for.
I just don't see that.
And this is based on Institute of Traffic Engineers, Transportation Engineers analysis. So they survey across the nation and look for similar facilities. Some will have, and what they're trying to say is this is the type of use that they anticipate. Type of use here is warehousing use that has, I'm not sure if you're thinking of other types of uses as well, but this is a warehouse use that generated the 828, and that is, just to make sure we're clear on that, that's passenger car equivalents. So that's not the actual, if you count the number of cars and trucks going by, that's when you take trucks and you multiply that by 3, I believe, to get the equivalent of multiple passenger cars. The actual trips that are coming are 632.
But you have 390 some parking spaces.
Right, but
that you're required.
Correct, and the parking is, so for number of passenger cars, for the employees and visitors, that's 503 of the 632. So we're talking, that's for the passenger cars visiting the site, the employees, employers that are visiting the site. So that's the 503 number. And as far as that's the parking spaces that you may be referring to. And then there's additional truck stall parking to put the trailers as well on the site.
Well, 350-some thousand square feet of warehouse building takes a lot of trucks to fill it up, and every day you have an equal amount of trucks taking it out because they're not long-term storage. So, and then if there's a requirement for a certain number of parking spaces, which I'm sure you didn't have any more than were required, the reason behind that is based on what the maximum use of that warehouse would be, best case scenario that the city can come up with to generate the amount of parking that you need. So I wouldn't want to discount the number of spaces that they're requiring you. If the traffic study was based on less traffic than what you're required to have for parking, it seems to be.
They're different numbers, and our traffic engineer can come up and talk about how the rates are determined, if you'd like some more detail on that. It is the cities have their own, and counties have their own parking rates and requirements based off of their own analysis for the area and specific to the area. The ITE analysis is, again, it's a more, it's a broader number that's looking at the type of use throughout many areas to determine how much is generated off that type of use.
Right. So, thank you.
So the only couple of comments I have on traffic, and we may need your traffic engineer after we hear the City of Calamasa representatives here, is there was a comment about using 10th edition versus 11th edition, and there was a comment, and I saw in your response, whether this is a sort fulfillment center or a warehousing center. We already know who's going to occupy this building, is that correct?
No, but the type of tenants that they've been talking to and anticipated user of this is a warehouse-oriented use. And
Got it.
so for purposes of CEQA analysis, we have to create an estimation or expectation of what that is, and based off of the type of tenant that the applicant is expecting to bring in, that's where the warehousing use was identified.
So
If
that's
there
what I
was-
wanted to clarify. We don't know who the tenant is, but the tenant will be a warehousing tenant versus a sort fulfillment.
And if there was a different type of tenant, a different user, manufacturing user, some other user, the city would be, your staff would see that as part of the the tenant improvements and business licensing, if they see that that's not consistent with the analysis, they would require that additional analysis would be prepared
All
for the
right.
project.
But it could be either warehousing or distribution as currently, as what you're, there would be no additional permitting or conditioning required for that, those two uses.
That's right.
For warehousing and distribution, like an Amazon distribution center.
So Amazon, there are a number of different types. I'd love my traffic engineer to get into the menu for me because there's a lot of different numbers
Yeah,
associated with that.
so
but
we'll,
we need
we'll,
to-
and like I said, we'll give your traffic engineer to probably come at the rebuttal stage after we hear the city of Calamasa. So if no one else from the commission has a question for Mr. Crowd, I will thank you. You can come back if we need you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna go a little unorthodox here. We've been going for a little over an hour and a half, and I'd like to give everyone a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and hear public comments, if that's okay. Usually when I do depositions, I take a break every hour, so hour and a half. It appears that we will be hearing, and I want to give you guys the full attention for the public hearing and a rebuttal. Considering this is the only item, we all get to hang out and chat maybe during the 10 minutes if you don't need a bathroom break. So let's take a 10-minute break. All right, almost 10 minutes there. Can we get going, or should we wait for Katrina? We can go going? All right. So with that, thank you so much. I know I needed the break. Appreciate it. Let's continue on the subject number 2 at the public comments. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, Vice Chair Markarian, we have 4 public comments,
All right.
5 public comments.
5 public comments. That's what I figured. That's why we took the break, so we can give them the full attention. So let's start with the first one.
Okay, Jason Bays.
Jason Mace, please come on up to the podium, speak at the microphone. Identify yourself, Mr. Mace. You will have 3 minutes.
Honorable Commission, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Jason Baez, and I'm a member of Labor's International Union of North America. And I fully support this project because at one time, a project just like this opened the door for me to bypass a long, extended waiting list into our apprenticeship and let me come right in. And once I was entered into our union apprenticeship, they trained me from the floor up, taught me about concrete, asphalt, all utilities outside the building, storm drain, sewage pipe, traffic control, a whole variety of different types of heavy highway and building construction. These lessons and teachings they gave me have enabled me to sufficiently provide for my beautiful 4 children and my lovely wife. I've been able to buy a nice home and provide all the things that, kids and the wife, constantly want. And it's just been a real blessing upon my life, to have a living wage and also to be able to provide excellent benefits as far as medical, dental, optometry, medical, and, I also have a pension for when I get older. I'll still be able to provide because as you know, even when the kids grow up, we still are providing and helping them long into the future. But other than that, these projects are very crucial for us because they give us the opportunity to make bonds with other workers, prove our worth, and also network with contractors. These things enable us to get on to the next project once this one is finished. And once we're gone, these facilities become job centers that accommodate all different types of situations. Everything from a student who needs a flexible work schedule to a spouse that has to take up a job because of the high cost of living these days and changing times, with no experience, to even, unfortunately, some of our elderly people have to take up jobs because of the high cost of living, and pensions just weren't as good back in the day in comparison to what they're paying out now. So these projects, these logistic companies, they're very liberal, they're very flexible, they're very non-discriminatory. They give a lot of people opportunities and first-time chances. It also provides, is my time up?
That's your 3 minutes. Thank you so much. We
Thank
get
you.
your message. I just wanted to hear where you live. Where do you live?
I live close by. I don't live here in this city, but I live close by.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mace. All right, the second speaker.
Jose Garcia.
Mr. Garcia, come on up. State your name and your address, please, of where you live.
Chair, Council, my name is Jose Garcia. I am currently relocating. That's why I didn't put an address. And I have a best friend that just relocated to this beautiful city of Yucaipa about.
Your time is up. No.
Thank you very much. Support the project. So that's why I didn't put it in purposely, because I wanted to share that news. I kind of really like it up here. The changing weathers, the different weather patterns you get. It's a little hot, but it's nice when it's cool.
Okay, so you're moving to Yucaipa?
We're really looking at it right now because our best friends moved up here about a year ago. Up here, you could see a giant house off the hill, one giant house. He lives right below there. So that's why I did not put an address.
All right.
But I'm also a LIUNA member, as you can tell. And I'm at the end of my career, so I'm coming to talk to the fellow brothers and sisters that come with me and that are depending on jobs like this. It's hard to get developers and builders to provide good paying jobs these days, and we got a good match up here. This project checks off all the boxes. They're not always perfect, but we need to start taking advantage of this thing, because just today I heard there were 17 ships out in the port right now because we don't have nowhere to put the stuff, and that it's all backed up out there. We got to do something, but I would rather have places with jobs here in America than be bringing stuff from out of the country. We need to get back to that. I don't have nothing with out of the country. I love visiting out of the country, but we need good American jobs. We need good manufactured goods that last. We're buying stuff at a high rate. I went to buy an oven the other day because I want to sell my house. My oven wasn't working. $5,000 and 1 year warranty, and it won't get here for a year. We need to create jobs here. And if you could please support this project, it goes a long way. Thank you very much for the time to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Third speaker.
Next, we have Bonnie Johnson.
All right, Ms. Johnson from the city of Calamasa. Thank you for coming up.
Yes, Chairman and members of the commission, thank you for giving us the opportunity to address you this evening. So you've heard, a lot this evening. You've seen a lot of the comments we submitted. So I only wanted to make a couple brief points, and then we do have a couple more speakers that you have slips for, which would be my city engineer and our traffic engineer, who will provide more of the technical comments that will respond to many of the issues that were raised this evening. I do want to say I very much appreciate the commission's attention to detail. I've heard some very astute comments this evening, and along the same lines that the city of Calamasa has been concerned about. So I do appreciate that. I did want to make a couple clarifications. The city of Calamasa does not have, at this point, the full response from the applicant. I know one was provided to the commission. Myself and my staff members do not have that. And in addition, we talked earlier, and you made a very astute observation, Chairman, about these things are hot off the press. We got the condition of approval that you're considering this evening. That's this Yucaipa staff's recommendation. We received that via email from Fermin Preciado approximately noon today. So then we turned around our comments in the form of a letter with the track changes to show the changes that we would request. And as you noted, about 5:45, after we had already arrived here, the response arrived on our email from Mr. Preciado. So it is all being coordinated as we speak. I believe there's more coordination that is necessary. And with that, again, I appreciate your time and attention. So as I mentioned, I do have my city attorney, my traffic engineer, they'll both speak. I've heard my planner's name be mentioned, Miss Lucia, she is here, and so is my mayor, Mr. Bill Davis. It's that important to the city of Calamasa that we get some resolution to some of our concerns. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And like I said, I personally have great respect and appreciate all the representatives from the city of Calamasa Mr. Davis, we have great respect for you, and we appreciate you being here, and everyone else. I just wanted to make a fun fact note about the wonderful relationship that Yucaipa and Calamasa has. My good friend is the superintendent of our school district. I don't know if people in the audience know this, but Yucaipa Calamasa Joint Unified School District is the only school district, I know in the state, I don't know about the country, but in the state of California that borders two counties, Riverside and San Bernardino. So that's why I've always had a soft spot for Calamasa. So appreciate you guys being here. All right. Fourth speaker.
Michael Thornton.
Mr. Thornton, coming up. Are you the city attorney or the engineer, traffic engineer?
All right. If you called me an attorney, you would be insulting me. So I am the city engineer. I was going to ask that you allow the traffic engineer. You allow the traffic engineer to go ahead of me and let me follow him with a few comments.
I don't know if anyone told you I'm an attorney, but it's all right. It's all right, Mr. Thornton. Go ahead. I won't hold that against you. We're the only career that has our own book of jokes, but go on.
And rightly so. But I was going to ask you to let our traffic engineer speak ahead of me and let me follow him, if you would, please.
So Justin Scalwolf? I'm sorry, I can't.
Thank you.
I can't
It's
read
it's a very difficult name, but thank you for trying. My name is Justin Slaffley. I'm the city traffic engineer for the city of Calamasa. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I was asked to review this project over the past couple of weeks, and to say that we have some concerns is perhaps understating a little bit. I think the nature of our concern is the degree to which the impacts would occur. So in your packet, you probably noticed an eye-popping number, something that I think it's probably the first time I've ever seen it in my career. There's a intersection which could suffer a delay of over 4,400 seconds. That's over an hour. That's an hour and 15 minutes approximately. And that would be the delay that the interchange would suffer if this project moves forward without a plan to actually construct signals and lanes. And that's in the record. That's something that the applicant provided. It's something that I reviewed. It certainly got my attention, and it should get your attention. So I think you see by our presence tonight, we're very concerned. The biggest part of that concern is that there is no concrete plan to solve that problem. We see in the draft condition, which was circulated just noon today, that there is no commitment to actually build the signals. There is a commitment to pay a small fair share towards the potential for the signals to be built at some point in the future if Caltrans allows on an interim basis. I think the commission astutely mentioned additional lanes as well. And believe it or not, that has long been part of the plan for the specific plan. So if you go back to the original EIR and you read condition T4 out of that EIR, then you will see that there are additional lanes that have long been planned for this project. It specifically says at County Line Road and I-10 eastbound and westbound ramps, east and west approaches, both eastbound and westbound ramps will be widened to provide one dedicated left, one right turn lane with a middle shared left through right lane. And then there's a subsequent condition, T12, which also adds lanes. And so, I think particularly with a project of this type, with heavy vehicles, with very large vehicles, a lot of those lanes should be considered and not just discarded or ignored or left on the back burner. And we're not saying any fair share even towards participating in those lanes. All we're getting right now is perhaps a fair share towards a signal, which there is no plan on the books today or approval from Caltrans to build. So we might actually experience that 4,400 seconds of delay at the interchange, which would be absolute gridlock and devastating to our city, and I know devastating to yours, as this is also partially a gateway to your city. I would note that even today, when we're seeing a condition of approval sent around at noon, which we provided some comments on, it conflicts with a condition of approval that's in your CUP in your packet. So downloading tonight and just reviewing, there's condition 122, which says the project shall be responsible for the installation of a traffic signal at the intersections I-10 southbound ramps and I-10 northbound ramps and be reimbursed through later development. So that language provides a bit more assurance and a bit more confidence, I think, for us than the language that's provided in the amended condition. provided there's a commitment from this project to actually build those signals. That's a good first start. And then secondarily, to provide a fair share towards the additional lanes, thereby avoiding that being backloaded onto the rest of the specific plan. So if the residential comes along and no fair shares have been collected towards those committed improvements, it's just going to be much more costly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, and Mr. Michael, what's your last name again? I'm so sorry.
Thornton.
Thornton.
So, so I appreciate you taking us in reverse order. So I just wanted to start by saying Calamasa supports the project as well. We do support the project. We just want to make sure that the traffic impacts that have been identified are mitigated. That is the whole discussion tonight. So I just want to make sure that I started with that. We would like the commission to understand that County Line Road is the front door to the city of Calamasa. And traffic impacts and delays affect us considerably. It's kind of sort of the back door to Yucaipa, but it is our front door. So we want to make sure we emphasize the needs of the mitigation that we've described. I wanted to clarify, the commission has talked about, you kind of stole our thunder a little bit tonight with some of your initial comments. The interchange, I just want to touch on that a little bit. We do see that as a joint project with the city of Yucaipa. There's some reference that that's a Calamasa project. We see it as a joint project. We will be working together on that. Yes, Calamasa has agreed to serve as the lead agency to help process it, but the city of Yucaipa, in our mind, will be standing right next to us every step of the way. So just in closing, maybe a long close here, just we are here in an attempt to avoid any kind of CEQA litigation or an appeal to the city council. And what we're asking you to do, one, is to look at perhaps delaying the decision tonight to allow the city of Calamasa to continue to work with the city of Yucaipa to resolve this condition that we don't agree upon that was on the screen tonight. Give us some more time to see if we can work together. Again, as our city manager mentioned, hot off the presses, we did get this information at noon today. We turned it around within a couple of hours. But if we could work just a little longer together, I think we could get to the point where it will be a condition that both cities could agree upon. If there is a need to approve it tonight, we would simply ask you to change the condition more consistent with how it was originally written, which was the project would build these signals, and then we would work together to try to figure out how the fair share contributions to Calamasa's developers as well as Yucaipa's developers would be shared. I mean, you identified it, Commissioner Hicks, it just doesn't look fair. It just doesn't look fair. And that's how we feel about it. Yes, we understand the raw numbers, but we would certainly like to move beyond the raw numbers and find a fair distribution of fair share costs. And finally, on the lane widths, it is too narrow, and we understand that it's too narrow, and that we need additional lanes. And those were identified. As Justin mentioned, those were identified. And so we reached out to Yucaipa to say, as part of this condition, it needs to include additional lanes on both County Line Road as well as freeway ramps so that it would work more efficiently. However, in an effort to resolve the dispute, Calamasa would offer this evening to say, if the Yucaipa project would just pay its fair share toward those lanes, then we would accept that as a compromise and allow the project to move forward. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Do we have any other public comments on this item?
There are no other public comments that received speaker slips.
All right. So before I go back to the applicant's rebuttal, I just want to note, again, my great, in a humble way, we love and appreciate the city of Calamasa personally, and I know I speak for the commission that whatever we do in our city impacts you guys, whatever you guys do impacts us. And Mr. Thorne, I'm a personal injury attorney. So it is to my greatest concern to make sure that we don't have any traffic issues. We maintain the safety because my kids are on these streets, my families are on these streets. So it is close to all of our hearts to make sure that this intersection, the traffic studies will come down to, and make sure that this is safe for everyone in the city of Yucaipa and the city of Calimesa, because we all live here and we love our city. So with that, let us go back to the applicant. I know you have a city engineer here, Mr. Crowd. Can we hear the city engineer? Are they present or are they available by telephone?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Crowd again. Our traffic engineer is here, actually Megan Macias, and can respond to a number of the comments.
Okay, wonderful.
And I just want to address a couple of things, if you don't mind, before then. I think, again, the collaboration has been great so far with the county, or with the city of Calimesa. And there's been a lot of responses, and that is the nature of going into hearings. There is a time frame that we have to respond. We received the Calimesa's letter on the 9th of June, and we responded very quickly. So it's a little bit late to the game as far as getting that comment letter. But still, we've been very open to the open dialogue with them on a regular basis, and never felt like we were closing that off at any point. And further recognition of the desire to continue to coordinate. The condition itself also has a memorandum of understanding that is required, which would have three-party agreement to address these very things that we're talking about. So that memorandum does speak to addressing the requirement for analyzing the fair share analysis, because importantly, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of projects that are planned in the area. A number of these projects will occur between now and the ultimate improvement of the interchange plans that we've talked about. Those projects will benefit from the traffic signals and any other improvements that occur between now and the ultimate improvement of the ramps. So in fairness, those would normally, just like any other regional improvement, roadway improvement, which is taking traffic from a number of projects, those conditions that are applied equally to each of these projects would have a provision that says there's a fair share calculation pay towards those improvements and reimburse anybody who completed that intersection improvement on their own. So that's the nature. That's what's embedded in the condition of approval. It's to recognize that it's not just one project that's requiring this. It's a number of projects. The gas station and the ultimate phases, they recognize the need for the signals as well. They were required similarly to build those signals in an interim condition. We recognize that as well. We built that into the condition and had a fair share analysis with that. There's the Mesa Verde residential development as well that is planned. So there are projects out there, and when you build those in, it does change those percentages, which I think I heard from maybe Commissioner Hicks. I forgot exactly which commissioners mentioned this, but the question was, is the percentage right? The percentages at 17% was based on the knowledge that there are other projects out there, the Mesa Verde being one of them, which was calculated into that percentage number, which brought the number down as far as a percentage, because it's not just the gas station or the warehouse that's contributing traffic to those intersections. It's more than that. So that's where the fair share numbers start to change when you account for the additional traffic loading onto those intersections, and would be benefiting from the reduction in or I guess the increase in the capacity, ability to accommodate the traffic. With that, I'd probably reach the knowledge base of my brain, and I'd be happy to use another brain that is much smarter than mine in the traffic-related world, especially, and many others too. So Megan will take over from here if you don't mind.
All right. Thank you so much. Please state your name.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Megan Macias. I work for EPD Solutions. I'd like to start just by addressing the concerns of the traffic engineer for the city of Calimesa. There was a couple, I think 2 main points made. One was that there was an eye-popping delay in our study of over 4,000 seconds at the ramp. And I just want to note that the traffic impact study for the RV fueling station notes a delay at that same intersection of 3,921 seconds. So there is one thing in traffic engineering when we're doing calculations using the highway capacity manual method. Once we get into level of service F, the more traffic you add, the delay increases very quickly. So you can see that we are somewhat consistent with that previous study that was approved by the city of Calimesa, in that they're showing a delay of 3,921 seconds, and we're showing a delay of over 4,000. So there is some incremental increase by adding the warehouse project. And we're not denying that, but it is very poor operation. The study that we prepared does show that with both projects, as well as this list of cumulative projects in the area, that addition of the signals at both ramps would result in adequate level of service. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's level of service C at both ramps. So that, and again, that's an interim improvement. Of course, you know that there's roundabouts planned at both of those ramps. So the two signals that are being added, even without the additional lanes on the ramp, would result in satisfactory level of service in the interim condition until the ultimate improvements are built. The other comment, the additional lanes, those were part of the plan from the original specific plan. It was condition T4 from the specific plan EIR. There was a document prepared that went through all of the mitigation measures in, excuse me, in the prior EIR. There wasn't just the additional lanes at County Line Road, but there were a number of additional improvements, including construction of another interchange, as I'm sure you know. We did look at all of those, and because this project is not built out of the entire specific plan, this project really only includes the warehouse project, which, as we've discussed, and we can go back to the question of the trip generation rates, but it generates significantly fewer trips than the land use allowed under the specific plan would have allowed, and so therefore most of those mitigation measures are no longer warranted. Only because, again, we're building out only one small portion of the specific plan, not the entire specific plan, and we're generating a lot fewer trips. The other thing I'd like to note is that the RV fueling station project does generate on a daily basis about 3.5 times more vehicle trips than the warehouse project. But it should be noted in those conditions of approval that the additional lanes that the city is requesting were not added to that project. So I think we need to ask the question, why is the city of Calamasa wanting to add those additional lanes onto this particular project when it generates so many fewer trips than the RV fueling station? I also think we need to look at the fact that there's not just these two projects, and as Jeremy pointed out, there's a lot of other projects, in the pipeline. And furthermore, these two intersections operate at acceptable level of service in the interim condition with all of these projects, including the two projects we're talking about tonight, without adding the additional lanes, which will be added in the future and have funding from a variety of different sources. So I think that addresses the city's comments. I do want to also address the discrepancy in the fair share percentages. So I was asked the question during the break, why don't the percentages add up when you look at the two projects? Why isn't it 100%? And the reason is that because when we calculate fair share as part of a traffic study, we calculate the AM fair share and then the PM fair share, and then the project's responsible for whichever one is higher. So we did that for both projects, and it turned out that for one project, the AM was higher, and for the other project, the PM was higher. So we probably should have either picked a peak hour, or I did quickly do the calculations, assuming that we just added the AM and PM peak hours together. And what we came up with is it's about 28% versus 72% at the southbound ramp. So the warehouse is 28%. And at the northbound ramp, it's 26% versus 74%. So that's actually more favorable for the warehouse project if we wanted to follow that methodology. If we did want to stick with the original numbers, I would suggest you could just keep the warehouse project and then, balance out the RV to 100%, whatever that would be. So I can answer any additional questions if you'd like, but I think I've addressed the
Thank you. Questions?
Of course, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So you said 3 times, how many times more traffic out of the gas station than the warehouse building?
So the RV fueling station this is the full project because there's a phase 1 and a phase 2.
Right.
So both phases generate 2,977 daily trips, and the warehouse generates 828 daily trips.
So my question is, based on that, I looked, just counting off what I saw on the screen, they have about 40 parking spaces maximum between phase 1 and phase 2 at the gas station. I thought they had more fueling positions, they only have 11. Again, that's one of my daily exit points, right? I'm on that off-ramp usually once a day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, back and forth. But since that gas station's been built, I haven't seen any increase in the traffic on that off-ramp. It backs up since the construction's been completed. While the construction was going, of course, it was a different thing. But it backs up about halfway up the ramp right now at the busiest peak times. Sometimes it gets a little closer, but the freeway's not moving very fast at that time too. So you have a total of 300 and something parking spaces plus truck traffic on top of that. They have 40. So that's quite a significant difference in spaces. I never see anyone hardly parked in their spaces that they have available right now other than their employees, other than the fueling positions and directly in front of the store, which is typical for gas station facilities. They have a good, 20 spaces that are empty during the day now, and I don't expect with what they're adding in the additional spaces that that's going to be a significant increase, it will be an increase, and it would be great to have a signal light at that location because it would allow the traffic to flow better in and off the freeway. I've never seen one car backed up at the entry to that gas station, not once. And as I said, that's my morning stop for my Diet Dr. Pepper every morning. So I disagree that, and without having the study and actually being able to peruse it and look at what it is, I couldn't, I don't want to say you're wrong, but I'm just basing this on my personal involvement with that intersection and that gas station compared to what I perceived the building. You got to turn that over at 40 versus almost 400 spaces plus trucks. That's a considerable increase in available parking to begin with, and how many times you have to turn that over in a 24-hour period and how many times in a 1-hour period to reach that, and I don't think those numbers match up. And the off-ramps, from what my understanding is, this isn't the long-term design would include a full interchange, and that these 2 signal lights are only interim that would allow you to construct this building and are not the long-term plan for how to deal with traffic with the other development that you have on these sites. It's just an interim measure to allow both the gas station and this to operate, or in your building to operate. So I don't think that needs to be shared between. My bigger concern would be that 70% of 1.2 million might go back to a gas station that does not generate any gas station. Even the Arco station down on Oakland Road is not going to generate the revenues to recoup that type of investment in off-ramp signal lights. It's going to be just a short-term fix that's going to allow you to build a project out. So again, that's just here nor there, other than I don't think the split's right, and I think City of Calamasa should have more time to review this and look at it and have their comments and their concerns addressed. Now,
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hicks, and thank you so much, Ms. Macias. All right, at this time, we will close the public comment.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, if I can just make a few comments about some of the comments that were made.
Sure.
First of all, I just wanted to say that, we, the City of Yucaipa staff, we appreciate the partnership with the City of Calamasa. As was mentioned earlier, we've worked together on many projects. Like I think Ben mentioned, the County Line Road Corridor project that is currently under construction. As I mentioned, we have had several discussions with the City of Calamasa regarding the first step for the what I call the ultimate interchange improvements at the County Line I-10 on-off ramps. we've had those discussions to initiate that process, and as Mr. Thornton, their city engineer, mentioned, we look forward to moving forward with that process to get that initial phase going as soon as possible. And I also wanted to mention that this item has been continued once from the previous meeting at the request of the City of Calamasa to allow more time for these discussions, which we have had over the last couple of weeks. And going back to the additional, the added condition number 122, it does mention, it does reference a memorandum of understanding, as the project applicant mentioned, an MOU, which is required as part of that condition of approval between the City of Yucaipa and the City of Calamasa and the project proponent to essentially establish what that methodology is going to be for the fair share for the interim signal improvements. Also, with the interim signal improvements, right now those intersections are experiencing a level of service D and F, as was mentioned earlier. With these interim signal improvements, that level and the projects, both projects, the level of service will be at a level of service C. So that is an improvement. The added condition of approval does require that the interim signal improvements be in place prior to building occupancy, and the condition of approval language does indicate that the plans need to be prepared and submitted to Caltrans for their review and approval at the same time as the building plans for this project are submitted to the city for review. And these interim signals are a standard process for Caltrans. You may remember back when the Live Oak Interchange was built in 2006, 2007. Prior to that, there was a plan in place to install interim traffic signals at the on-off ramps prior to that project being developed. Fortunately, the interim signals were designed. We had construction plans for them, but they were ultimately not constructed because the City of Yucaipa was able to work with SBCTA and Caltrans to obtain the funds for the full interchange improvements. So those interim signal improvements were reviewed and approved and permitted through Caltrans at the time. So that is, the interim signals are a standard. I'm using the word standard, but it is something that Caltrans has processed in the past. And I also wanted to reference there was some discussion earlier about the eastbound off-ramp, and the City of Yucaipa has been involved in working with Caltrans and SPCTA on their extension of their truck climbing lane from Live Oak all the way to County Line Road. So that is a project that has been approved, and I just wanted to reiterate that the fuel station project within the City of Calamasa, it does also include a condition of approval, according to our research, a condition of approval that requires the interim signal improvements. Again, and that's to improve the level of service there. And finally, I just wanted to mention that, it is, I believe that requiring any project to widen the underpass to 4 lanes under the freeway at County Line Road is essentially a moratorium for any project within the City of Yucaipa and the City of Calamasa. I just wanted to mention that, but in closing, I just wanted to add that or reiterate that we have been working with the City of Calamasa on many projects, many joint projects, and including this. And again, we appreciate that partnership over the years.
And if I may add in, with the comments, one, the traffic study for level of service does identify that with the traffic signals and the Future Plus project would actually be, at worst case, a level of service C for AM peak on one of the directions, but then the rest of the intersection flows would actually be a level of service B, which is a considerable improvement over the existing conditions. I do also want to note that the conditions as provided in the staff report and PDF packet. That condition had been provided to the city of Calamasa as part of our discussion. They had some concerns or wanted some additional specificity. All this comes down to is timing right now as we identify that fuel station project, the phase 2, will be required pursuant to the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the city of Calamasa to do those traffic signals. This project also has that same condition, and really the modifications to everything is to help coordinate that. So rather than waiting for one project to start it, is we're making sure, hey, when this project goes through the city's permit process, we have a accountability measure in place in the MOU to make sure that those steps are being followed and being adhered to, since right now that isn't necessarily clear on if that work has been taking place yet. And so we want to make sure that it's transparent, and that was in response to the city of Calamasa in our meetings that we've had with them. And I do want to note just kind of quickly at the last kind of component for the traffic generation rates. Parking lot spaces itself isn't necessarily a barometer for what the traffic flow is going to be. A retail use restaurant, coffee shop, and fuel station may have less parking spaces, so there isn't necessarily as many people at one site at one time. But the length of stay that those people are there and the hours in which they do that is going to be a lot heavier, much more concentrated versus a employment-based use where, yeah, you may have 300-something spaces, but those employees are working standardized shifts, and so you may have some overflow and overlap of those trips, but it isn't necessarily going to be as much activity happening, with cars coming in and out, in and out, in and out all day for those kind of quick service retail uses. And then certainly additional note is, with the warehouse project, I think it is worth noting that there are different types of uses in the flow. This isn't necessarily one of those 1 million+ square feet, super Amazon centers. This project itself has the parking provided for trucks as well as the 36 different docks. And so, you're not necessarily going to be able to have, if you're thinking hypothetically of the traffic flow, a truck comes in, they dock up to the doors, you have the unloading and reloading of that manifest onto that truck, and then it's moving out from there. It isn't necessarily like a truck is backing in and out every minute. It's certainly a coordinated effort to get all that stuff through. And so if we're looking at the traffic generation rates, I think that's worthwhile to set that perspective of how the traffic is moving and what the distinction is with this particular project versus a retail-oriented use. And that was what is also reflected in the comparative analysis of the regional commercial designation in this particular project with respect to the freeway corridor specific plan EIR that's in place and sets the baseline for this environmental review.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Matlock, and thank you, Mr. Preciado.
Can I ask, sorry, one more. You're talking about traffic counts with employees. So you're requiring over 300 spaces. If they run 3 shifts a day, and say the overlap on those spaces is determined so that you have an overlap in employees coming and going, but you could still easily have, if you have 300 spaces and you only turn it over twice a day instead of 3 times a day for 3 shifts, you're gonna have 1,200 trips just based on that potentially. And so to me, just the traffic study seems flawed in its basis to begin with. And then my other question would be for me is, was the gas station supposed to participate in the signals on both sides of the freeway or just one?
I believe it's both sides.
Yeah, that's what
They
it
were,
Yes.
for the temporary or the interim signals, they're supposed to participate in both?
That's correct.
So I think it's just very important to get this thing, right, because I don't like to see 77% of it put on a gas station that I don't think is going to generate 77% of the traffic. And, again, studies are done by everyone, and it just depends on who's funding the study and what the parameters are and the bases are to come up with what the numbers are gonna be.
It says 77.3% of the southbound ramp, 79.67% of the northbound ramp.
Right.
So it's both directions.
And I
roughly
don't see,
80% of each.
as it is right now, I don't see any significant increase in traffic since that gas station's been open. And I look at the retail that they have there, they would have to do 5 times the business of In-N-Out and Chick-fil-A combined, I think, to generate that kind of traffic flow. But I mean, that's just
Right.
no basis because I don't have the report to look at.
So I have a few questions, and Commissioner Hicks's concern is one of my questions. But I just want to synthesize the issues here, and I want to establish a foundation that we are all on the same page that we want this project to go through. That's including the city of Calamasa, the city of Yucaipa, and the union employees, and I think it's beneficial to the neighborhood. It's going to make the city more beautiful and more profitable. This is what we want. This is what we all want.
I think we want, but I think there's a process of determining how badly we want it. And I think that there may need to be more information, clarified before we all come to the consensus and lock arms and say, we're moving forward because we love this project.
So-
No, let's just take it a step at a time and get some information. I think that's how I see it. So I can only agree with part of what you said.
Well, we all want, that was my foundation. I haven't gotten to the concerns I have yet. So, and I'm with you as well. I think we got to do it safely. We got to do it methodically. There's no reason for us to rush into any project. So I have some questions as to the timeline. And Mr. Preciado, I don't know if you or Mr. Matlock have the answers. When was the first time that there was notice of this project?
I will defer to Ben on that question.
Ben, when did we start working on this project and send notices?
We have been working with the applicant for a bit on the project. I'm trying to see when the project hearing notice was mailed out.
Ben,
The
the project hearing notice was sent out on February 2nd of 2022. That was a planning division project notice that was sent out.
All right, so that's the first time that we had notice sent out to the city of Calamasa and everyone concerned is February 2nd, 2022?
Yes.
All right. And since that day, obviously, I think the two main concerns, we all know this is going to bring more traffic. So we're going to need that interim traffic signal. We're going to need the additional lanes. And I believe we are also all in agreement that we need a traffic signal and additional lanes. I think the issue is, when are we going to get those things and who's going to pay for them? So let's start with when are we going to get those things? And I know you said we don't have anything to say or add onto the expansion of the lanes. And Mr. Thornton shared that, hey, Calamasa will take the lead, but we're going to work together on expanding that underpass. And that's great news, but I don't think this project should be held up for that lane expansion, because I don't think that lane expansion is going to take place anytime soon, right? So that's not going to affect this project. That is something that we want to talk about, and both of our cities would like to see, and it would be in the benefit of all the businesses and the residents of both cities. So no one is against it. City of Calamasa, let's get on it. We'd love to help you and get that project going and expanding the lanes. Now, as far as the interim signal, that has a cost of $1.2 million and the cost sharing, I tend to agree with Commissioner Hicks's comments on the traffic study and apportionment of the traffic with the gas station and the future retail. I think something he's not taking into consideration is he's stopping by now when it's phase one, and the Ms. Macias's report includes the full capacity of phase two of that retail station and the gas station combined. But nevertheless, I think his comments about the apportionment of the, not only the traffic, but the business that's going to be generated, the gas station versus this warehouse is going to be a little lopsided based on what I am hearing and what I am seeing as well. With that being said, this $1.2 million interim signal, let's start with when is that going to go ahead? And I know you made a comment, there's an MOU here that it has to be up and running before the permit is given for them to operate. Is that my correct understanding?
The MOU, the interim traffic signal, it needs to be constructed and in operation prior to the certificate of occupancy being issued.
Perfect. So that's, I think that makes everyone, instead of waiting that hour and 15 minutes, only wait a few minutes. And I heard Mr. Matlock on the phone say, not only we're gonna come from F to C in service, we're gonna go down to probably B and the traffic there. Now, let's talk about the apportionment, and I think that's something that's related to this project that we need to discuss. In your amendment, number 122, the apportionment that Commissioner Rexstad is mentioning as well, we are apportioning almost 80% on one side and 77.5% on the other on the gas station. So let's start with how did we reach these numbers?
And actually, isn't the gas station, it's in Calamasa, right? Yeah, so that's, so the apportionment of how that's determined, is that Yucaipa's responsibility? Or can we just editorialize on it and say it's kind of, it's, as Commissioner Hicks has said, it seems a little out of whack, and I agree, but do we have any authority to make any changes of it? Or is that a Calamasa issue?
So the percentages that you see in the amended condition of approval, those come directly from the traffic impact analysis that was completed for the warehouse project, as well as the City of Calamasa's gas station project. And I don't have the details in front of me, but perhaps the applicant's traffic engineer can provide a better explanation as to how those percentages came about.
Well, and
there a
whether
traffic
they're
engineer?
changed or not is not really up to our purview, is it?
Excuse me, can you repeat that question?
It's whether those percentages are changed or adjusted or whatever, is that up to the Yucaipa purview, or is that a joint thing between Yucaipa, Calamasa, and the developer, all three?
Well, those percentages, the City of Yucaipa doesn't have the ability to essentially change those percentages in the traffic study, but I do want to point out that there is language in the amended condition of approval that says, however, the final fair share amounts will be determined based on the fair share calculation of traffic associated with planned and approved projects that will contribute traffic to these intersections prior to completion of the ultimate interchange improvements. And then there's language in there that talks about the MOU that's going to memorialize that methodology.
Yeah.
And that was one of my concerns as well. The City of Calamasa approved the construction of the gas station. Was that something that Yucaipa did? Did we look at that? No. And there was no, I think that's what Ms. Macias mentioned as well as Mr. Crowd. There was no interim traffic required for the gas station that's existed, has gone through its phase one, is going to go through phase two. And now we have this warehouse coming in, and we are requiring the gas station that's operating.
If I can just clarify one thing, the conditions of approval for the City of Calamasa project did include a condition for the gas station project to construct the interim signal improvements prior to their phase two.
All right, so that, and that changes things. So now,
yeah, and if I may add as well, not to interrupt, when we received the project notice for that project, we also did provide a note that as these kind of commercialized projects come through, Definitely interim measures will be necessary to support the traffic until the full-on interchange is done. And so that is, as Ramin mentioned, already a condition of approval for that gas station project as well.
All right, thank you, Ben. Was there a discussion in the city of Calamesa's approval when they required the interim signal to be built before phase 2 of apportionment, of a fair share apportionment of the $1.2 million cost? Do you know that?
I believe, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is mention to a fair share cost in their condition of approval for the interim
And
improvements.
what percentage of the 1.2 did the city of Calamasa? I mean, I will entertain Mr. Thornton or anyone else from the city of Calamasa if you guys know the answer. Did you guys have a fair share apportionment of what percentage of the $1.2 million the gas station will contribute to before phase 2?
I have this stuff in front of me.
Miss, Ben, we have Miss Macias standing at the mic, so let's give her a chance and we'll come back to you. Miss Macias, go ahead.
So, according to the traffic study for the RV fueling station, that they were 58% responsible for the southbound ramp, or I guess that would be the eastbound ramp, and 46% responsible for the westbound ramp.
All right, so 58 and 46.
And that responsibility is because of all these other projects as well. But of course, the way that the condition is being written for the warehouse project, it's assigning responsibility only to the warehouse and the fueling station project. So I just want to point out that say if the warehouse project were not to proceed based upon, the discussions tonight, the gas station would be 100% responsible, based upon, the scenario that's being set up here.
And that's a very good point she brings up, because all of these projects have not broken ground yet. These are all future projects that we're seeing surrounding the site on the slide that Mr. Crowd brought. These are all future projects that have not yet contributed anything into the 1.2 million. Is that correct? You guys have had the slides? Did Mr. Crowd share the slide with the staff?
But these projects include the 58 and 46% that was calculated in the traffic study for the fueling station include these projects.
Yeah,
That's part of the total future traffic volume. But based upon the discussions for the conditions of approval that would be approved tonight, it's only apportioning the cost between the two projects. And as you noticed, none of these other projects.
And that's a very good point, Ms. Messiah. So Ben, I'll give you a chance, and we have Mr. Crowd that stepped up to the mic as well. But Ben, do you want to add something now?
It was more or less just tying in. So both projects, and we'll separate them out. The fuel station project, in order to open phase 2, has to build the intersection improvements. And then the way these things are set up is then you have a reimbursement that happens for these individual projects that kind of pay into it once they get built. And really the intention between the condition is we're trying to make sure that it gets built. We can presume maybe one gets there started first or the other. That's where the MOU comes in. And then trying to dovetail, there's the wiggle room in that condition that these other projects are coming through that we can condition them to do the fair share cost as well, then they would dovetail it in. But really the focus is we have these two projects coming through that do create some of the concerns with or exacerbation of the existing traffic issues, and trying to divvy up those based on the technical studies that each project had prepared. So the numbers for the fuel station project isn't numbers that we necessarily made up, as what Cal Mesa had approved.
All right. And Mr. Crowd, do you want to add anything to that?
I just was responding to the one question specific to this slide, and this came from, like Ms. Macias said, from the Cal Mesa report that looked at cumulative traffic in the area. As far as which ones have been built and contributed, a lot of these are in Cal Mesa, so not necessarily your staff would know what has been contributing, but the intention with the conditions of approval is to recognize that as projects come online and are required to contribute, the condition would factor that in and start bringing the percentages down for each of the uses. As we heard, alone, the gas station, I think you mentioned, Commissioner Hicks, how could it pay for it with a 70%? Right now, it has 100%. It could be a significant cost on its own. So the warehouse does bring the percentage down significantly. In addition, as these other projects come online and also have to contribute towards the intersection, the reimbursement agreements would be required so that the funds that they pay in go towards the I guess the fronters, the people that front the money in order for the intersections to be approved. So importantly though, as these projects are approved and move forward, improvements will be built. That's the important point in here, that these would be built.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Macias. Thank you, Mr. Kraut. So, Mr. Preciado, back to you. My question. This is my first encounter, so this is very educational to me. But I'm trying to think as the owner of the warehouse, as the owner of the gas station, as the residents of both cities, and that's our job, is to balance all of these interests and make the best decision we can come up with today. With this 1.2 million, just to be clear, this is both traffic signals, not on one side. This is east and westbound, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And with that, generally speaking, the cost would be fronted by the city and we're going to get reimbursement from these projects? Or do we wait for the gas station to pay the 80% and then build them?
The intent is for neither city to have to front any of the costs. It would be covered by the project that comes first. So if this is approved, then the warehouse project would take the lead. And then as part of the MOU that's identified in the condition of approval, we would work out the reimbursement between the future projects.
All right, so are we expecting, because I saw there's a fiscal number that we had of impact, and I know Mr. Kraut had that slide too. There it is. So we're getting a fiscal impact of $1.8 million, of which the traffic facilities is 1.2. Does that 1.219 include the 1.2 for the traffic light?
No.
So this is other than that. All right. I'm puzzled by the process that we all want this traffic light, we all want the lane expansion, we all want the business, we all want that. But I think we have to go about it the right way. As Commissioner Rexstadt said, we don't want to squeeze anyone out of business. We don't want to make anyone or cause it to be a moratorium on any business to come here. And the best way to proceed forward appears, based on this amendment of number 122, is that if we were to recommend it as it's presented, with the amended condition of approval that's at issue right now is 122, the warehouse would be responsible for 34.88% of the northbound and 35.77 of the southbound. And then 77.3 and 79.67 is going to be on the gas station. I think that's what we're having an issue with, is that apportionment. So unless someone has a solution, I don't know how we can come up with a number tonight without a study that would address Commissioner Hicks's concern, where the traffic that is going to be generated by the warehouse is a little off.
Well, that's only my concern with traffic. I do have another concern.
All right, and we'll come to your second concern. But my concern is the apportionment at this stage. Because we all want this project, we all want the traffic light, we all want the widening of the lanes, but the only issue right now that I see is the apportionment on the warehouse versus the gas station. Because the warehouse has representatives here today, and the gas station doesn't, even though it sits in Calamasa, and Calamasa has approved this 58% and 48%, 58 on the eastbound and 48 on the westbound lane off-ramps. that's taken into account all of the Calamasa projects that are coming up. So I want to defer to the commission, and we'll get to your second concern. If we can come up with anyone has any suggestion, we make the modification we make the amended condition of approval of 122 and keep the gas stations share at 58 and 48 versus 77 and 79, or approve it as is. And
Well, we don't have access to what the city of Calamasa has already does or does not have in their agreement. And I really think that as a good neighbor in a city, we need to give, we can't determine what that percentage should be or how it should be, but I think everybody needs to be on the same page on that.
so, and with that, even though Mr. Thornton tried to offend me being an attorney, but I want to go back to his point, would delaying this to another meeting cause any harm to anybody, especially the representatives? Just so we can get these numbers ironed out? I mean, I know we can approve it now and you guys will figure it out later. I'm not one that would agree to let's pass this bill and see what's in it kind of approach. I'd like to see everything here and give all the parties involved and that have an interest an opportunity to work with that. So Mr. Kraut, I guess I'll go back to you and see if, or even Mr. Roger Datis, am I saying it right? Datos, I'm sorry. I wanted to see if you guys would be amenable to give this a little more time. We've ironed everything out, I think, except that apportionment. Mr. Kraut, I'll give you the floor for a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. I did want to just point out a couple things on the percentages, just to make sure we're clear. So the 55%, I think it was, or 58% number.
58 and 48.
So I want to make sure that we're clear on that number. So the 58 and 40 was in the traffic study prepared for the fuel station project. The applicant for that project was involved in it. They agreed to that number and agreed to the condition of approval, apportioning the costs associated with those intersections, the 58 and 40. So they said, we can front that cost, or we can pay that cost when you count for all these other projects that I had on the screen and the reimbursements that would come back to them as a result. In the interim, though, in order for them to build that last phase, they have to, currently, without the warehouse, they have to pay 100% of the intersection improvements. So they would have to pay 100% of those signals, and then later on, they would, as those projects would build out, they would receive back reimbursements to reduce that number. And so that's one point. With the warehouse number, or warehouse project, when it goes up to the 3570 number, again, Ms. Macias, it talked about the reason that it doesn't add up to 100. It's because when you have to go to the highest number in the peak periods, but it can be adjusted there. The reason it goes up to the higher number, to over 70% for the gas station, is because we're only accounting for 2 projects. But fairly, just like the gas station project did, you should account for other projects in the area. And that's what the MOU is intended to do. So the MOU is saying, we know this is what we know at this time, but we know other projects out there. We know there's a distribution of traffic that's going to feed to this. Let's do an apportionment method via traffic analysis that would come up with the final percentages and include that in the MOU. And that way, the numbers, again, if we were to take the warehouse project, add it to the traffic study alone that was done for the gas station, that 58 number would actually come down even further from that, because the gas station or the warehouse would be added to that. So those numbers would come down because of the warehouse project being a party to this, to the payments that are required for those intersections. Again, the warehouse is resulting in a spreading of the peanut butter of the costs of the intersection improvements.
Can I ask what your estimated build-out cost on this with land acquisition would be for this project? Something just ballpark?
About 30 million.
30 million. So I'm guessing that the gas station with phase 1 and 2 is probably an $8 million project total, max.
I think it sounds, with that large of a site, all the phases, I think that's probably pretty low. But again, it's not about the way that these apportionments work. They're based on traffic and the contributing, the ones that are
Well,
intersected.
I understand that's the way it was based, but I'm just basing it on. And so my understanding is right now, warehousing space is selling for quite a bit more than $100 a square foot. But anyway, that be what it is. I believe that's out of whack. Now, my second point, whenever you're ready for it, or I'll hold off.
Well, and I just want to iron this out. So, Mr. Crowd, thank you very much. I want to go back to Mr. Preciado. If we were to approve this amended condition number 122 with the apportionment that is presented by our staff, that means, per Mr. Crowd and Ms. Messia's presentation, we are actually helping the gas station because before building their phase 2, they were required to have a traffic light done. Is that correct?
As was mentioned earlier, without this project, the gas station project would be responsible for 100%.
For the 100%, and then they would get reimbursements whenever the warehouse comes, wherever the other, I think we said Calamesa Verde project is gonna come. So they would get reimbursed whatever they spent into the 1.2 million. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
And even if a project is built after a permanent, because we have the ultimate built out of this off-ramp, on-ramp, and intersections. So if a project is built in the future, they would still have to contribute towards this 1.2 that the warehouse and the gas station had to pay for? Is that your understanding of what the MOU is going to require?
I think that's one of the items that will be clarified in an MOU as to when that timeline is.
That makes me feel a little more comfortable. My intention was not to put the heavy burden on the gas station, and that answers my concern. So, Commissioner Hicks, your second concern.
You know, just for staff, I greatly appreciate when you guys receive these projects. Your job is to try to facilitate this type of a project, and I think warehouses are great. You know, I think they're a vital part of the overall development. And I appreciate all the work you put into trying to get it to this point and make it work, and I know how hard that is to do. But my second point is, by being asked to be on this board or on this commission, is to look at the overall impact of what staff, you know, you make your recommendation based on what the project is and what the property owners want to do and the developer wants to do. And our purview is this the type of project that we want at that off-ramp? We only have 3 off-ramps in Yucaipa, possibly 4. And my note was the projected sales tax revenue was $153,000 off this project. And that's the only viable commercial piece of property on that off-ramp for the city of Yucaipa. Everything else on both ends is developed, whether it's Calamesa or Yucaipa. Or Calamesa has several lots there, but not much right at the off-ramp. So it's the only off-ramp, or the only developable, or the only larger site that's freeway visibility and that's in that end of Yucaipa for development. So at $153,000 in sales tax revenue, I don't know what the projection is off the center at Yucaipa Boulevard that has the Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out Burger and the other fast foods and developments that are going there. But I know the sales tax revenue is off of that piece, which is probably not, it's probably comparable in size to this piece, has to be 10 times what the projected sales tax revenue is off of this. And once that building's built there, it's there for as far as my ever is, and probably the next couple of generations forever. And I know that staff doesn't have the ability to, you process the projects, and I appreciate that. But I think it's up to us to decide as the planning commission whether or not this is a fit for that off-ramp and how that affects, generations of people that live in both Yucaipa and Calamasa. So that's my concern with the overall project. The traffic's one thing that can be fixed, but once that building's there, it's there permanently. And my concern is it's not the right fit for the only piece of property we have on that off-ramp for development, and that there's other developments that provide a better quality of life for our citizens and keep people from going down to Redlands to spend their money and keep it in town versus a warehouse building that, of course, generates some capital at this point and generates some tax revenue, but nowhere near what the potential tax revenue is for the only piece of property we have available at that site. So I would ask everyone on this commission to consider that.
So I'm going to consider and respond to you in the next section of the commission discussion section. But as far as public hearing, can I close public hearing, or you guys have anything else to add? All right. So at this point, I will close the public hearing portion, and I will start with responding or making another comment in response to Commissioner Hicks's concern, which I share. And as much as we'd love to see the best projects in our city and next door city, I'd prefer any project over empty land. So unless we have a competing project that wants to build a new Disneyland or something in Calamasa or Yucaipa, or combining our properties to make good use out of them, one of the benefits that I'm seeing, Commissioner Hicks, not only from the sales tax alone, but 350 jobs is another benefit that this project would bring, other than a lot of good jobs for union workers. To build the project, it's going to be the home for a lot of employees from both of our cities, hopefully predominantly from the cities of Yucaipa and Calamasa, that are not working or are interested in finding a good paying job. Yes, it's not the best project that we could have, but it's the best project today. And I'll use a term that we are very familiar with in the military when we served, is you go to war with the army that you have and not the army that you want. And with that being said, I am in favor of this project so long as these traffic concerns are addressed with the traffic light, with the interim light, with the ultimate build out, with the lane expansion, with obviously working with our good neighbors from the city of Calamasa, and like I said, city of Calamasa representatives, as much as we love and respect and appreciate you guys, I haven't heard about you guys not giving us the same respect and appreciation when we have projects and future plans of working with you guys. So I hope that respect continues to exist between both of our cities, whether it's on the city council level or the planning commission level, so we can both work on promoting good projects for our cities. But that's all I have to say on, I believe the project is a good project, with the only concern that we have is, you guys, there's a reason why the law requires tractor trailers to have higher policy limits. These injuries are serious injuries. And I do not want to have any injuries caused by a traffic condition that we can prevent sitting here today. Aside from the delays we're gonna have to get used to, just like Beaumont off of Highland Springs, on-ramp and off-ramp, that thing is horrendous. Sitting in that traffic trying to come back from the Home Depot or whatever we go to, Best Buy, and getting back on the freeway to go westbound, you're sitting in that traffic for a few minutes. And I don't know what the city of Beaumont was thinking about expanding or they have coming up, but let's be a little more proactive and make sure that we encourage a safe traffic, we encourage a flowing traffic on that on-ramp and off-ramp. With that, any other commissioners? Commissioner Richard? Commissioner Brzee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this has been a very robust discussion about some serious issues relative to this project. I have a couple of comments. With all due respect to the views that my fellow commissioners have on our responsibilities here, I understand mine to be somewhat different. As I understand it, the policymakers in this city is the city council. They establish these policies through the development code, and in this case, the Yucaipa Freeway Corridor Specific Plan. And I view our responsibility is to determine what the city council has dictated these appropriate land uses are for various areas, and they do that through the zoning on them. Our staff has looked at this project and dictated that for this area, this is a project that is consistent with our general plan, and in this case, the specific plan. So in that regard, and I am not, it doesn't phase my ability or the way I look at this. I am not a fan of warehouses. I've commuted all these years to and from San Bernardino and watched warehouses go up, and the Inland Empire to me is becoming what appears to be a haven for warehouses. These are market-driven and land-use-driven issues, and it is what it is, and it doesn't phase my looking at this project within the confines of what I view my responsibility is, which is to see what our city council has dictated appropriate land uses are for this. I view also the elephant in the room to be the fact that the mayor and the city manager and significant staff have come here. They've spent their evening here to send a message to us that their concerns are significant about this. So when one of them stands there and asks for more time to look at the issues, and I don't know if my fellow commissioners heard the comment that was dropped by Mr. Thornton, and that is seek a lawsuit and or a appeal to the city council. Based on my past career experience, I took those comments to be very, very serious. And in terms of time, for our staff and staff from the city of Calamasa to get together and hammer out these things. So we're not looking at documents that are dated the very date we are holding our hearing. I think that has to be a reasonable and a very possible alternative to look at that. But also, it's, and I respect the developer, you've been in this process probably for years trying to locate the property and develop it and design it and do all the other things that I think we understand go into this. So I'm very respectful of the individual property rights and your right to have a hearing and to have a thumbs up or thumbs down on your project. But if you've got another government entity who we highly respect, who is suggesting that if we can't get these issues hammered out, that the process is going to be delayed anyway, because they will either appeal this to the city council, and I don't know what that takes, probably minimum 6 weeks to publish the notices and prep it up for the city council to hear it, as opposed to a few weeks, I'm assuming, to get this stuff hammered out, and then we all come and one of the members here talked about going lock arms. We would lock arms with the city of Calamasa. The issues would be hammered out, and then you would get a thumbs up or thumbs down. And presumably, based on what appears the tenor of the commission is, you'd get an approval of the project, and with no threat of this being extended even further. So, Mr. Chairman, that would be my, I think we should take very seriously the suggestion that this should be continued, as opposed to trying to figure out, and I don't think any of us claim to have an idea what these numbers should be. That's why we've got at least, what, 4 traffic engineering type people here who did this for a living, and we have to respect that. I look at these also as what is a judge, assuming this case goes to litigation, and it very well could, hopefully it doesn't, but what is a judge going to be looking at when he looks at a record where, I mean, commissioners are making a stab in the dark that this is or is not appropriate, but we've got a well-established record with professionals who are saying these are the percentages that should apply to these projects. So hopefully the city of Yucaipa and the city of Calamasa staff can get together and work these things out, and I think they should be given the time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioner Brazil. Commissioner Rexstad.
I've said enough. I'm done.
All right, so just a couple of comments on Commissioner Brazil's comments. I do take your comments seriously, Mr. Thornton. I'm not one that would be shaken by a lawsuit. I live in courthouses, so I don't mind a lawsuit. But if there's a lawsuit for something that is not wrong or something that is consistent with the general plan and the specific plan according to what the city council, the city managers have worked on, I don't think this project is inconsistent with either the general or the specific plan. Now, and just if I were to ask before we vote on this, Mr. Thornton, if you could give us an idea of what is the anticipated lawsuit or appeal going to be based on. Can you share that with us?
So I would certainly have to consult with the city's attorney. I hated to use that term, but yes, we would. And the discussion is really, we're asking for more time, is traffic. And that's how I'll answer your question. Let's resolve the traffic condition differences between the two cities.
Okay, so you're talking about the apportionment part, or you're talking about something other than, so, and I appreciate you coming up back to the podium. If we were to discuss the interim traffic light, that's what you guys want to discuss. So what would the additional time, I guess, serve for you guys to iron out that we cannot iron out with the MOU that is being suggested by the staff from the city of Yucaipa? Yeah, sure. You're here all night, so might as well.
All right. So we did get a copy of the condition. We suggested some changes. Staff on the Yucaipa side said those changes were unacceptable. That's what we want to work on. Can we come to a meeting of the minds of where Calamasa's position and Yucaipa's positions are now? And I believe we can with more time.
All right, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me go back to Mr. Preciado. What is the condition that the city of Calamasa wanted that is not acceptable by our staff? Just to get more specific and see if it's something that we need more time for, or is this something that you guys can iron out after we vote on this project and approve, or I don't think we can deny it for any reason, but if there is something that we can work on and after this project goes forward today.
There are two concerns that we have. One is the omission of the proposed omission of other development projects that would contribute their fair share, and then the omission of the percentages that are included in the additional condition. And if I may add, if it would be appropriate, since you allowed the party that commented earlier, allow an opportunity for the project applicant to also provide a response to your
Sure.
question.
Sure, I mean, and I would do that in the interest of saving time and delaying it, because to Commissioner Brazil's comment, if no one is objecting to it and it's not gonna cause significant harm, I am for continuing it to hash this out later. But I'm willing to open this opportunity for us to see if we can answer these concerns today. So the only issue that the city of Calamasa has is with the apportionment. Is that what I'm understanding correctly?
It was again, the apportionment, and then they're proposing the omission of the reference to other projects that may have a fair share contribution towards the interim signals.
All right, and so they want the 1.2 to be contributed to only by the gas station and the warehouse?
I believe so, but we haven't had I haven't asked the question, but that is what their comment letter
All right.
is suggesting.
Well, from my understanding, from what Mr. Crowd and Ms. Macias presented, and they seem to be more aware of what the future projects on the Calamasa side are coming up. When those projects are finished, the MOU that we are asked to consider and the amended condition of approval 122 is going to require those, that's what I asked earlier, is going to require those projects to contribute into their fair share of what the 1.2 is. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah,
So-
and if I may add, there is one more, in reviewing the response letter from the city of Calamasa, there is a third item where they reference the two mitigation measures for the overall freeway corridor specific plan. I think they indicated earlier that it was mitigation measure T4 and T12. They are, in their letter, they are requesting that those mitigation measures be part of this project. But as I mentioned in my email response to them, those two mitigation measures are for the build out
That's
of
right.
the overall freeway corridor.
And I agree with that. City of Calamasa, I love you. This is not related to this project. I don't believe it is. The widening and under the environmental impact report, T4 and T12 that was discussed and mentioned by the traffic engineer from the city of Calamasa, I don't think that should hold up this project. And I don't think you guys want to hold this project up either for that. So that's why my focus is on the apportionment, and I want to hash the apportionment part right now, because the build-out is something that we're going to work on together, this project or not. So Mr. Crowd, let me give you an opportunity to see if we can make this happen tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Crowd again. Yeah, the way that the condition came back from the city of Calamasa, I read it the same, that it took out other projects, which wouldn't be an appropriate way to analyze it, even the way that their own traffic study apportioned it to other projects in the area. That said, we want to get this built, and what we're talking about here, and I know that the applicant is willing to pay for a portion of the improvements at that intersection. They'd even be willing to increase that percentage if that would address the Calamasa's concerns, especially on the front-loading side of it, because that's important. Trying to get it across the finish line to address Commissioner Hicks' comment, we're basing it on the traditional analysis, the way traffic studies are completed. You use traffic data, and then you portion it because that's what impacts the intersections, and you pay it based off that percentage. That said, I think we want to build this out, and so if that's the comment that's being provided, is to increase that percentage, I don't think that's an issue with the applicant. I think the intention with the MOU is to make sure that we get those percentages right, and that would be a coordinated effort between the parties, and so that we would make sure that the other projects are identified, that they're agreed upon because it's based on a prior traffic analysis. Maybe some additional projects are in line, so we'd have to understand what those are, and then we'd apportion it accordingly. So that was the intention of the MOU, and we weren't quite sure what the intention was in talking with your staff as well. Why remove that when that's really the intention of the MOU and how you apportion fair share costs to intersections and apply it to projects as you look at all those other projects. So we just weren't sure why that would be needed to be removed from the project or from the mitigation.
All right. And I understand and agree with that approach. I think I would not be in favor of postponing this. I think we really hashed out all the details. Thank you, Mr. Crowd. I think we hashed out the details. My concern is everybody else's concern is the apportionment of the $1.2 million interim traffic light construction and including the future projects, which we don't have access to. So we have to work with the city of Calamasa and make sure that all future projects that are going to come in are going to pay their fair share of whatever that percentage is, because these two percentages are only accounting for the gas station and the warehouse. And I think we're all in agreement that those are not the only two projects that will be affecting the traffic flow or causing.
All circuits are busy. Please try your call again later. Announcement 8, switch.
Okay. So there are going to be future projects that will impact the traffic, that will impact the safety, and again, to Commissioner Hicks's point of the residents, the trucks that are going to be going back and forth. And I entrust that both of our cities, much smarter people than some of our attorneys, will be working on, there you go, Mr. Thorne, I got you, that will be working on making sure these projects go forward safely with a traffic flow that's better than other further cities on that side. With that, I will entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'm going to just say, I really find it difficult to want to approve anything that isn't written down in black and white with exact percentages agreed upon by Calamasa and Yucaipa before tonight's meeting. I can't do it. So, I mean, you can get a nominee, you can get somebody to move that we bring it to the floor, but you know what my vote's going to be.
Well, I mean, and you can make a motion to either continue it or approve or deny it. I think,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Yeah, I have a question of staff, and that is, do we have a scheduled meeting 1st of July?
We will likely have a meeting scheduled for the 1st of July. I do want to just kind of note, and perhaps that's part of the discussion, is some of the numbers that we had set it up with the condition to give flexibility, that there's the reconciliation towards the end, because we don't know, we can't envision necessarily what projects may come online at the same time as these are being built that then would also contribute to it. And so we did try to bake in that flexibility through the MOU to address that reality that there may be another project, either in Yucaipa or Calamasa, that would also create the demand for that signal, and they would have an obligation to pay for that too. And so the condition is set up to provide that baked-in flexibility, because we can't know that until that signal is built and all the permits that have been issued that would be related to that demand is in place.
And thank you, Ben, for that. And I just want to add a couple of other things. So if we were to continue this to July 1st, I will not be here. I will be out of the country for 3 weeks.
Actually, is there a meeting end of this month? Is there a meeting the 29th?
The next possible meeting would be the 6th of July.
Yeah, so I will not be here, and I don't want anyone to be disadvantaged by me enjoying my time in a very peaceful neighborhood of the Middle East. But that's one, that I would not want to continue this. And two, to Ben's point, even if we were to continue this by 30 days from today and come back in 30 days, I don't think we will have the percentages that we're looking for, because we don't know which future projects are undergoing. We don't know their timeline. So I think the MOU is that safety measure inside the amended condition 122 that would allow the cities to have that ongoing cooperation and work the percentages out. And it would be in everyone's favor for us to work those percentages, because neither of the cities are going to be paying these costs if it's going to come out of the future projects. We just want to make sure that whatever the fair share is something that is an ongoing process, and not put 30 days from today, hey, Calamasa, Yucaipa, come up with the numbers. That's my approach, and I don't want to delay the good hard work of people. You guys, this is California, and everyone is leaving California. I just came back from a trip to Houston. All of our good businesses are leaving because of all the restrictions and limitations and requirements that California requires, that if you're in Houston, you would have had the warehouse up probably a couple months ago already. And I don't want to do that to any business, let alone a business that's coming into the city of Yucaipa. So I would encourage the commission to consider the steps that these businesses are going through, the struggles that are going through. That is not a Calamasa or a Yucaipa struggle, it's a state of California struggle. And let us give them a way to do it in a safe way, in a methodical way, with starting with today's approval. So,
And I'll have to go back to Commissioner Brzez's statement. And yet we sit here with the mayor, the city manager, the city engineer, and the city traffic engineer asking us to delay this so that they can have a chance to respond to something they received today at noon. And I think that is important for us to have happen. Again, I'm a pro-development guy, and I only bring up the issue of uses as a comment of really very little importance in the overall thing, because I'm also a proponent of warehouse buildings. But the traffic is a concern, and just from a development standpoint, if I'm the gas station guy with phase 2, and I'm expected at some point here for a temporary signal before I can do my phase 2, based on what my sales are now, and based on the gas prices, which I guarantee you that gas station's not making any more money per gallon on that fuel than he was. The state of California is making a lot more money on the sales tax they're collecting off of it. But if I'm him, I am going to, at this point, if I'm assessed with 80% of $1.2 million, I'm not going to start my phase 2. I'm going to hold back and sit there and wait until the city of Calamasa and the city of Yucaipa jointly improve the overpass and the off-ramps, and then I'll think about building my phase 2. Because at this point, for the potential return on investment for putting out this kind of money for traffic signals is, my opinion, will not happen with that operator based on what his sales are now. So if that doesn't happen, then who foots the rest of that bill for the $1.2 million, no matter what the split is on it? And future projects really don't come into this because they're not existent and they're not there, and they may change and they may not change, and we can't really base that. But this is temporary signal lights. This is not permanent fix to the problem and the long-term development of both cities. But again, I just think with these folks sitting here that I've never seen in one of these meetings before, we ought to give them the courtesy of our sister city and allow this. So based on that, I'll make a motion that we continue this.
all right, well, we have a motion to continue.
I will second the motion if we can specify a date certain, so there's no need to renotice this hearing. And the next meeting would be July 6th. And I understand, Mr. Chairman, you're not going to be here.
I will not. I mean, unless you
Mr.
guys...
Chair, if I may, since much of the discussion here has been regarding the percentages, and that is, City of Yucaipa staff have many discussions with the project applicant regarding those percentages as far as their contribution, perhaps giving them an opportunity to respond to the comments regarding the percentages first. Would that be appropriate?
Commissioner Hicks, would you like to hear a discussion on your vote before we vote on it, your motion?
I've heard lots of discussion on it.
I don't mind. Yeah, I don't mind,
yeah,
yeah, I don't
please.
mind giving them another
I'll
opportunity.
withdraw my motion at this time.
All right, so with the motion being withdrawn, let's hear one more shot at the percentages. And before we hear that, I just want to note to the commissioners as well, that from my understanding, the gas station has to have the traffic light up before phase 2, but also for the warehouse, we have to have the traffic light up before we give the occupancy permit, which is at least a couple of years out. So I don't know how far the gas station is from its phase 2, but I just want the commissioners to have that in mind. There's about a 2-year timeline in any way we slice this pie for that traffic condition, the traffic light. But a nice gentleman is stepping up to the mic. Sir, go ahead and introduce yourself and solve our issue here.
Well, I'm not sure I can solve the issue, but I'm Steve Batchelor. I'm the regional partner for Transwestern. Thank you to the commission members. Thank you for the Calamasa folks. We're happy to work with you guys. At least we're happy to work something out. Commissioner Hicks, I understand your comments. We're willing to split that cost 50-50 in order and kind of good faith. And I would also say that conceptually, we'd be fine with the conditions that Calamasa put on the gas station, basically as far as traffic. The one thing we can't do is agree to build a freeway intersection. That's $25 million. That's the death penalty. So we'd be fine with the same conditions that they put on the gas station, and we'll split the cost 50-50. In total respect to Calamasa, if it needs to be extended, I can live with that personally. But if you guys can work it out now, then that's fine. But we want to play ball, and we want to be fair. We want to be good neighbors with both Calamasa and with Yucaipa. So with that.
Well, thank you very much. That's definitely bringing it back. So let me open it up one more time. Again, Mr. Mayor, Madam City Manager, Mr. Thornton, and I know I had your name here somewhere, but I have so many notes. Remind me of your name, traffic engineer.
Justin Slafley.
That's why it was the hard name, Slaffer. I didn't catch up to that. Thank you, Justin. And we appreciate you guys being here. And Ms. Johnson, you're pointing to the nice lady to your left. Who are you, ma'am? Oh, Kelly, you're all over the paperwork here. So thank you for being here as well, Ms. Lucia. We have big respect for you guys. And will this 50-50 olive branch make this something that we can approve today and make you guys hash out the other details with the city staff for the city of Yucaipa? Would you guys be comfortable? We want to respect all of your presence here. So I would be willing to make a motion for the 50-50 split on the amended condition 122, if we can make this happen tonight. I don't know if we've ever done this kind of negotiating at a planning commission meeting, but hey, why not?
Chairman and commissioners, again, I appreciate all the time and effort that you have spent. Our difficulty tonight is committing anything when we have conditions of approval in place for a project. So for us to commit to change any of those conditions of approval on the fly is difficult and can't really happen with respect to our developer who did build the gas station and is working on the RV fueling. Having said that, I appreciate the applicant also offered, besides 50-50, was to delay it till July 6th. That would give us an opportunity to talk with our developer. But I think talking about percentages like 50-50 are getting to a place that we can potentially sell that to our developer, and we can work with it. So I very much appreciate it. It's big movement on behalf of the project applicant, and it's much appreciated. But again, it's difficult for us to make that commitment standing here tonight because we have conditions of approval in place, and we owe our developer that courtesy to talk with him He wasn't aware the conversation was going to go in this direction. We weren't aware it was going in this direction until we got that revised condition at noon today. Miss Lucia has been trying to, inform him via text, that we're having this conversation, but an continuance would be much, much appreciated with my commitment to work toward resolution. I think this dialogue has been very helpful, and we'll make ourselves available to both your developer and your city staff.
All right, thank you very much again, Ms. Johnson, appreciate it. So, the ball is in our court, gentlemen, and before you make a motion, like I said, obviously the July 6th continuance is gonna allow for some concrete conditions to be met. As much as I love and respect our neighbor city, obviously I love and respect our own staff and trust them and have faith with them, and our city manager is also in presence today. I would like to see this go forward with the 50-50 modification, and allow everyone else to get together and work out the details as we always do on any project if something comes up. So with the only modification on condition number 122, splitting the fair share to 50-50 is what I would like to see happen. But again, that's why we are a committee and a commission, and I will open the floor for a motion if anyone wants to make a motion at this time.
And I do appreciate Fermin and all of the city staff and all of their work on this. But again, I think, as our chairman said, this is a 2-year project minimum to get this thing up and running. It's probably more like 3. And if we delay until the 6th of July to give our neighboring city a chance to respond to something they just received today and work with their developer, I think that's
fair compromise.
I think it's a fair compromise, and I think that the developer here has stated that he's okay with that. I'm sure it's not what he wants. We all want to get our projects done, and I appreciate that. But I just really think we need to, and that way we need to work together, and I would hope that the city of Calamasa would grant us the same courtesy if we had an issue on something.
You're definitely gonna owe us one on this one, City of Calamasa.
So I'll make a motion that we continue until the 6th of July.
I have a motion to continue to July 6th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, with a first and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's a unanimous respect to the neighbor, and we appreciate the project and the applicant, and we will definitely hope to have this ironed out by July 6th, so this project can successfully move forward. With that, I think that was the only item we have. Mr. Preciado, do we have anything else before we close?
No, I don't have any announcements, but I turn it over to Ben. Ben, do you have any announcements?
No, sounds like we'll have a fun meeting on July 6th, and look forward to hopefully being in person for the next time. So
You and I will switch roles, and if you allow me to appear telephonically to contribute to the discussion on July 6th, I will make sure I take my time out from a little bit of time difference in Beirut, Lebanon, to appear at the Planning Commission here in the city of Yucaipa. So with that, thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate you being on the telephone with us. And thank you, everyone, for coming in and enjoying until a 10 o'clock meeting here at the Planning Commission.
I'm sure we don't want to redo these packages, so can we leave our packages?
Yeah, I'm going to leave all of this. So thank you so much. Again, City of Calamasa representatives and obviously our city manager and city staff. So thank you. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Hey, did JR know?